Good afternoon to everyone.
Afternoon.
I take this opportunity to welcome both the learned speaker for today. The first session will be taken by Kalyan Raman, and Kalyan is going to talk us through about various opportunities on the IT side, and he will cover both the aspects of it, the audit as well as the consulting side. And friends, although chartered accountancy is a basic qualification, but after that we can even do a diploma in information systems audit from ICI. We can do a certified information systems auditor from Isaka USA, and we can get into the audit side of things. And there are a lot of things on the courses on penetration testing, vulnerability assessment, and we can cover the whole gamut of IT risk assessment, IT audits, IT policy procedure, business continuity, disaster recovery. And I'm sure Kalyan is going to talk us about all of those in detail. So there are lots and lots of opportunities for chartered accountants there. Then we have a second speaker, Dhrubabrata Ghosh, and Dhrubo is going to cover the new age tools and techniques as an auditor, statutory as well as internal auditor. What can we do? And as a finance function, finance controller, CFO, what type of automations can we do? And he will touch upon data analytics, continuous control monitoring, maybe some of the touch upon some process mining tools, even robotic process automation, and overall in an organization, what type of digitalization automation can be done. And of course, he will also talk about various like the organizations who sell the tool. And Dhrubo, if you can just touch upon some of the courses also which people can do if there are after their CA as they want to make career in this line.
Sure.
So I welcome both of them here, and after that we'll go into the panel. So now I also recognize presence of CA Parthasarathy. She is the coordinator for today, and now I request Pramita to introduce both the speakers. So she will introduce both of them, and then Kalyan will get started. Around 5:45, Kalyan will finish. I would request all the participants to keep typing their questions in the chat box. And when Kalyan finishes, we'll look at the questions, we'll place it to him, seek his answers, clarification, and then Dhrubo can get started. And once Dhrubo finishes, we'll take some questions to him also, and then we'll move into the panel. So, Pramita, over to you for the introduction.
Thank you, sir. So our first speaker for today is Mr. Kalyan Raman. He's a managing director with Protivity's technological consulting practice and is the national leader for technology, strategy, operations, cloud consultations in India. He has more than 20 years of experience in the areas of technology, digital and risk consulting, including cloud assurance, IT audits, IT governance, cyber assurance, business continuity and resilience, ERP advisory, and others. He has led several risk and transformation projects for various clients in industries such as government, energy, BFSI, manufacturing, retail, telecommunication, and others. He is a fellow chartered accountant, a cost and management accountant, and he also possesses multiple certifications such as CISA, CISM, CRISC, CISSP, ABCP, Enterprise Architecture, ISO 27001, BS 25999, and others. He participates regularly in various panel discussions, conferences, seminars, and has also contributed several articles for publications and newsletters in the region. We also have with us Mr. Dhrubabrata Ghosh. He has BE Masters of Technology, PGDBM, and leads the data and digital practice for Protivity India. He is a data evangelist with a focus on developing and architecting end-to-end data science solutions. He has worked with large global telecommunication, banking, and utility clients and has experience with working in business intelligence, revenue management, master data management domain. He also works as a core member for Protivity to define the next generation of internal audit and to see how technology can act as an enabler of audit. So I welcome both of you to our session for today. I now request Kalyanji to please take it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pravita ji. Thank you, Murtuza. Thank you to the WRCCA Institute. Thank you so much to all of you. And thanks to all the attendees here who has come on this evening session. So it's very important for me to make them, sit for another, couple of hours, I believe. So the first session supposedly going to be an interesting session, and just want to check, just want to do a mic check. So am I audible? My voice is clear.
Perfect.
Right. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you. So let's start with this session on welcoming all your young members, and this is an important mentorship program. I wish I had such kind of opportunities some 20 years back when I qualified my chartered accountants to be passing this kind of message to the young chartered accountants and also to the chartered accountants who are working in various fields, because this is another I would say the opportunity is growing a lot in terms of IT security or IT audit because of the technological innovation coming into play. So there's a lot of things that a chartered accountant can do in this particular situation of technology transformation, and we all should be proud that we are well placed in this particular scenario of growth, where India is going to see tremendous growth in the post-COVID situation. And I'm happy to be a proud chartered accountant in that particular role, and contribute to this technology transformation areas as part of productivity, and help our clients in solving a lot of complex problems using these digital and technology aspects. So welcome to all of you, and so let's start the session. So I have a brief agenda. I know that we have around 30 to 45 minutes, and I will try to complete this session, without boring you much. I will touch upon a brief about our organization, and it is there to all of you to have a look at it on our website as well. Just a very high-level brief, one slide on that, and then I will touch upon the IT security, which is a very which is a very happening topic, and which all of us will be seeing day-to-day life because of the technology innovation, technology and work from home, all those situations, which is creating a lot of complex challenges because of this IT security aspects. And a brief on what is exactly about IT security, what are the pillars of information security. Information security is a bit broader topic. I would like to focus it at the broader level rather than narrowing down to an IT security aspect. And what are the kind of causes which is happening, why how the situations are happening in the current scenarios, and what are the kind of causes in the current scenarios. Then more importantly, as a chartered accountant, how it is interconnected with us, and we as a chartered accountants would have been involved in a lot of financial statement audits. So how the technology and financial statements audits are getting interconnected, and what is our role play in that as an external auditor or an internal auditor, and more importantly, what are all the kinds of roles as a chartered accountant can play in this IT security arena and in this IT security domain. So those are some of the topics which I would like to touch upon, and I would like all of you to be patient for another half an hour, so that once we open up the chat box for more questions, you can ask me as many questions as possible. So thank you so much for being into this session. So just a quick about Protiviti. Protiviti is a company which is started in as a risk consulting company in US, in New York, and it is an 100% subsidiary of Robotic, which is a $1 billion company. And we as Protiviti focus on risk consulting, technology consulting, internal audit, business consulting. We don't do external audits and taxation services. And we have crossed $1 billion in the last year, and we are growing a lot in terms of size in revenue as well as in resources. And in India, we are 6 offices, all metros plus Bangalore and Hyderabad. We are also planning to open offices in Pune and other areas. So we are a 1,000+ strong team in India, and we have a marquee clients, top 50 BSc census clients are all our clients. And in fact, more importantly, we employ a lot of chartered accountants, cost accountants, management accountants. So those are the, and I am a chartered accountant, as as we were introducing earlier, and I started into being an IT risk consultant some 20 years back, and now I lead a practice on cloud security within Protiviti, and also support Muthusa and the team on the IT internal audits. So you might wonder, being a chartered accountant, what we are doing in technology risk or IT audits and cloud security risk. So a lot of areas of opportunity are there available for being chartered accountants. So, the World Economic Forum, this is one of the top forum, and people go into and browse a lot of topics about it. So they keep publishing about this kind of global risks happening year on year. So one of the 2020 risks which they have, identified is two important risks within the top 10 risks of 2020 would be on cyber attacks as well as on disruption of operations as well as theft of data and money. So these are some of the two important risks which they have highlighted, because as you all know that we are in a digital economy and India is in the verge of converting into a digital economy. I mean, thoroughly, I would say thoroughly, largely, and also bring in a lot of digital governance within the government sector as well. So there is a spur of growth in that, and post COVID, and in fact, this COVID is driving all of us to be transforming ourselves into as much technology as possible to adoption and getting into the digital situation. Apologies for that. And so so that is one of the key aspects which is also bringing in a lot of risk. See, there's always a saying, when you bring in a new technology, there is bound to be a certain risk, and when you're trying to do new business, there is bound to be a certain risk. So it's not that there is no risk in business, or it's no risk in because of introduction of technology. It is bound to be there, and we as chartered accountants can help in mitigating such risk and encourage the business to grow in a better manner. So we are rightly placed in that particular scenario to guide as an external auditor, or to guide, I mean, in the role of external auditor or in the role of a CFO or a board member, how we can manage this kind of risk from because of the introduction of various technology. Be it in any industry you wanted to put your career, there is a role play for you in terms of this particular risk management area on the technology due to the technology adoption. So this COVID-19 definitely has brought in a lot of challenges for the people, for the public at large, for the employees, for the companies, for the organization, in fact, for the government as well as for the economy. So what has happened is that because of this COVID, many of them have been forced to work from home, rather do virtual conferences like this, virtual webinars. In fact, last 1 year, many of you would not have thought that this could have happened in our CA Institute, or this kind of gathering on a webinar could have been possible also. See, there are some challenges we had, and we are now able to overcome these challenges, and we are now doing a virtual webinar wherein we are sitting at home, walking through the presentation or walking through the discussions across India. And so we are happy. I mean, we are privileged to be part of that forum, and because of that, now we are extending our work environment, or we are extending our official environment, professional environment to home. So there it brings again a lot of challenges with that. We do have a lot of comfort being at home. Many people would agree to that. Many people would have different opinion, but because of being at home and doing certain things, it has also forced us to bring in a lot of risk within that particular situation. So what we do, some of the basic risks we have is we are now dependent solely on the internet. Without internet now it is very difficult to get connected because we are virtual. So internet is becoming a large dependent. Yes, there is a lot of business for the telecom companies, but it is bringing in a lot of risk as well. So the home-based internet is largely not as secure or compared to your corporate internet. So that is becoming a major vulnerability, we call it, or a major risk factor in this particular situation. Then another important aspect is the BYOD, we call it, which is an acronym for bring your own device. So bring your own device, what it means is that when you are sitting at home, you are bound to use your, you need to have a laptop, or you need to have a desktop computer, or you need to have an iPad if there is a board member, CFO or C-level people, or you may use your mobile phones. Yes, many of these are provided by corporates, but sometimes the corporates may not be able to offer this to many of the employees because they would not have visualized such a kind of largeness of working from home environment. So because of that, you are forced to use certain devices which you are using by yourself, and that brings in a lot of again a security problem or a technology risk problem, and there again the challenges starts creeping in, because that is the point of entry for many of the root causes which an organization could face in terms of IT security or IT vulnerability. And then comes the remote access. So when I say remote access, meaning you are sitting at your home or sitting from your hotel or another place or outside your office premises and trying to access your corporate environment, or probably when the people are going to be employed, I mean, they will be accessing their corporate systems, IT systems. Being within the corporate environment, within the walls of the environment, where you have a lot of product layers of security, starting from your physical security, the security at the gate, and then security at the doors, and then security at your work location, and security at your workstation level. So there are layers of security which gets built upon till you enter or access or you are able to use your IT corporate IT systems. But here, sitting at home, you don't have that opportunity to build that layer. I mean, to have that layers built across by the corporates, and that again helps in creeping up a lot of issues in terms of the security issues or vulnerabilities or the risk during this during this interface between your corporate systems and your desktops or your laptops, what you're using at home. Another thing is that this is becoming, because of this, your last point of mail, which we call it as a endpoints, which is your, at the end of the day, your desktops, which you are using it, or the laptops using it, becomes very critical, because that is an entry point, as I said earlier, to access your systems at the corporate environment. And so that has to be secured enough. And that is some area which large people are working across and building up those kind of security. So this is becoming a big challenge now in this particular COVID situation. And now this is not going to end, and this is going to increase, because we are expecting, as we speak, that another 3-4 quarters to be working from home, and many of the IT companies are also being asked to work from home by next couple of months. So this is going to continue, and this is going to be a kind of way of working as well. And many organizations are now started thinking of, why can't we extend this corporate environment to at home, so that it helps them in a lot way and brings in a lot of productivity to certain people. And so, because this is also a way of working now, it has become in many parts of our life in India, in Indian culture. And so this brings a lot of risk within the corporate environment. And you being an chartered accountant, in future going to be one of the controllers of financials for large corporates, or probably one of the CEOs, or probably maybe you never know, you may be starting your own company as well. So you need to be aware of these kind of risks. And these are some of the things which a chartered accountant would be much able to appreciate, because he is the person who is going to bring, or he is the person who has he or she is the person who has a control perspective in his mind, because we have been taught to be understanding what is the risk and what is the control. So that's entirely goes into our blood, and as a chartered accountant, we have been taught to do that. And so we are in a situation that we not only financials, the assets which are supporting the financials, be it a manufacturing, or be it a factory, be it a technology, be it people, we start evaluating risk across these assets, which help in ensuring that you are having a proper financial reporting system. So that's our mindset, that's how we work, and that's what we learn also. So that same principle is getting applied to your technology, and you need to analyze the risks and identify the control. So that's where we play a large role. And because of that, all aspects of technology comes into play in the IT security domain. And so these are some of the aspects which I would like to touch upon because of this COVID situation. And what are the technologies which is getting impacted currently? This is a scenario in a corporate environment. This scenario could be different for a government. This scenario could be different for a manufacturing organization. This scenario could be different for a startup company. But generally what happens is that in a corporate environment, you have an IT system, an ERP system, people call enterprise resource planning system, or the core system, or the the SAP or the Oracles. If it's a bank, you call it as a core banking system. If it's an ATM system, or if it's a manufacturing company, you can talk about the technology which is helping in doing the manufacturing process, be it a of an IoT, or it can be the robotics which is being involved in the manufacturing environment. Or if it's probably a finance company, investment company, they talk about the investment management systems. So And what at the end of the day, what happens? These are the systems which is helping you to operate your company, and these are the core systems which is bringing you the financial statements. Gone are the days that people used to have their books, books of accounts, we call it actually, because people write it in the books and then keep that copy in safe places. But now everything in records, everything in bits and bytes, and everything goes into the system, and that has improved a lot. And now we are going into the cloud as well. So cloud is something, it's not the physical cloud we are talking in the, it's cloud meaning it's the systems are available somewhere and you cannot see it physically currently, because it may be sitting in Germany, or it may be sitting in US, or it may be sitting in Bangalore also. But you will be sitting in a location which is not closer to your, to your within your premises. Your systems may not be within the premises. It may be sitting elsewhere. So now it's become so virtual that you are not able to see any of your the transactions or any of your financial statements on a real-time basis, but it's only available in a digital or in a bit in the systems. So you need to ensure that as a financial controller, how you are protecting that. So what are all the risks which can impact those systems, and eventually with the financial reporting? I will talk upon that. I have a separate slide on that, how it is getting interconnected. And so as we speak, in the bottom of the slide, you can see that the technologies which are getting impact in a typical corporate culture environment is ERP, or if it's a bank, it's a core application. The industrial control systems, this applies to the manufacturing organization. In many of the manufacturing organizations we do have in India, where they're interconnected with the messages. It could be they are called as ICS. In the oil refineries, they are the control systems which they are digital control systems which run the operations, plant operations. So even they are at risk actually due to a lot of security issues, and we also play an important role in managing those systems. And then the cloud as well as the mobility, because now the next gen, or we call the young gen people, are perfectly able to use mobile in a more advanced manner than any of the people in the previous generation, or probably more than myself as well, I would say, because my daughter can use mobile more easily than me. Actually, they are more so the technology is coming to each one of their the devices. So because of that, it's bringing a lot of risk as well. So these are some of the aspects which is getting impacted due to the situation. It's not that it's the COVID is driving it. COVID has brought in also a lot of the risk into this particular environment, and this is something which we are supposed to manage as well in our organization. So as we move on, so IT security, it's, as we also talk about, is becoming one of the top challenges. As we said, even the World Economic Forum has said like that, and now it is becoming a point of discussion in every company or in every organization. People will be talking of capital initially. Now, along with the capital to start a company, we are also thinking that how secure will be our organization is going to be, because everything is going to be virtual. As a startup company, you will see people sitting elsewhere and then trying to access a Gmail or using some of the GDocs for their office automation systems. And so there again, security comes into play actually. So this is becoming a talk of the, this is becoming a topic of discussion at the board level nowadays. So, and this shows that, it's very important. People are very serious about this topic. And how it all started, it's because of the introduction of technology, introduction of newer technologies. The security keeps building, actually the risk keeps building. So as you might have heard about the recent today's article, or I believe yesterday's article which is published in the ET. Now 75% of the workforce, our secretary has said that will be continuing to be working from outside office. That brings a lot of security risk as well. And in fact, WhatsApp has started introducing the payment systems. So GPay, all those things are going to bring in, are already having a lot of security issues actually. So, the regulated way of using your technology will help in managing those risks. Risk is going to be there. It cannot be eliminated, but how much of regulatory or mitigating controls we are bringing in to, to avoid those breach or avoid those security lapses is the challenge we face and we have to face. So one security incident could, disrupt the business operations, or could damage your reputation, or definitely it can get you out of the business. And in fact, as we speak, we are hearing a lot of security issues, which is, I mean, other than the fraud, I am saying, there are some, a lot of companies who have lost their business due to these kind of security problems within their corporate environment. And Productivity did a survey, and in fact, in the survey, a global survey, and to understand how much of the percentage of the revenue spent is being now focused on IT security. And if you see that, around the financial services is topping that, and almost nearly 25%, I would say, finance is coming up in terms of the this spending in terms of the revenue actually, because financial services and the technology as well, they are saying, because the technology, many of the IT companies have to protect their corporate assets, the intellectual assets, and they are also investing a lot. And so the life sciences, their healthcare, because it's become, many of them are now bringing in healthcare, bringing a lot of technology into the healthcare area. So there again, the risk is being coming up, and so people are trying to invest a lot of their the R&D on the cyber security, how to manage the security on that. So the average spend keeps on increasing year on year on the cyber security. So I mean, I've been using terms like IT security, cyber security. I'm now touching upon information security. See, people talk about these terms, but almost these terms are all interchangeable, and it can be used in an environment. But information security meaning it's a larger scenario. Well, it talks about information in general. Information could be a data, it could be an IT, or it could be a just a system, or it could be an ERP, or it could be a kind of a small document also, which has been written in in manuscript, but which is confidential. So information security is what is the umbrella of the overall security aspects which we talk about. So what are the three pillars which generally people talk about information security? One is the confidentiality pillar, which means that access or information is given to the appropriate person. So it should be ensured that whoever is going to access any system, or whoever is going to get information, should be the appropriate person, or should be the authorized person. So if you breach that, then it means that the confidentiality is breached. So that's where in the IT security terminologies, we have a concept of principle of least privilege. So what they say is that a person is not given any privileges to access any systems unless asked for, or unless it is essential. So that's the principle which they adopt. Okay, so that principle gets applied in any of your technology, which is one of the key pillars. So by doing this, we are ensuring that information or assets are confidential, and it is given to the right hands, or to the right people, or probably seen by the right person. Then the other important pillar is the integrity pillar. Integrity, as we all know, is that anything happening to the data or the systems, any changes which is not authorized, or which is not warranted, or which is done in an in a fraudulent manner, that means that there is a change or modification done which is not supposed to be done in an appropriate manner. So that there the integrity gets lost for that. So that integrity of data or integrity of system is getting affected. So how do we protect that? So the option is, or the way to look at it is that we should ensure that no one is having an unauthorized access, or no one is allowed to do an unauthorized modification to any of those systems or data. Thereby you are protecting the integrity of the data, to ensure that your financial statements are reported in an appropriate manner. The other important thing is availability. Yes, I'm able to protect confidential. I'm able to protect the data by using it's integral. But if it is not available for use, then there is another problem which is happening. Well, because of this IT systems, they are all technology, or nuts and bolts are built on electronics. So if they are not available for use when it is required to be available, when it's required to be used, so then again there is a problem there. So we need to ensure that those systems or those technology is available to an authorized people, and to avoid any unauthorized changes, so that the information systems is protected, and the data coming out of it, or the reporting coming out of it are on a secure manner, and they are reliable manner for as a financial or as a CFO or a CEO, if he wants to take any output out of it. So So those are these pillars which we need to ensure, which is built upon, I mean, as an organization. But how do we do that? Is that we need to build a lot of controls around it. So some of the controls, lies around the people control, which we always say in an in IT risk area is the weakest link, because people meaning, staff, resources. So we need to ensure that those resources are having or understanding what are the risks available within the organization, and you need to start building controls around it. So people control is an essential control which will help in controlling the or mitigating the risk arising out of IT. Then the organization controls. When you say organization controls, it's a policies and procedures, it's a tone at the top, those kind of controls which we need to build in. And the technical controls. Technical controls are the IT related controls. So which is being built within the system or developed within the system, or developed within the ERP application during the implementation, all those things. So anything related to technology or technical aspects is technical control. The organization controls are more like the policies and procedures, the governance aspects, all those aspects. And the people control is the actual staff, how they are securing, how they are, because they are the people who are using this technology. So having said that about the risk and the controls which we need to look at, and understood about the basics of information security. So I've just given an examples of kind of security attacks, techniques, I would say, which is happening. I mean, these are all very commonly known attacks. These are some of the illustrations, and there are a lot of sophisticated attacks. I just want to pick few of them, for people to be aware of it. Of the most common attack is a virus. Virus is the software virus, not the human. I mean, talking about the virus in the human beings. I'm talking about the virus in the software or the technology. That's the easiest way to to bring a security issue or attack an IT system. Then worm, we call it. Worm is nothing but it spreads within the system or network or a corporate environment, and then creates a problem. Spam, COVID-19 has created a lot of spam. Spam comes in even in your Hotmail, Yahoo. It comes in your corporate mail. Spam is nothing but an unsolicited mail which is coming to you, and you by knowingly or unknowingly you click on it, and then it creates a problem. So if you see my previous slides, I would have touched upon there are nearly 40,000 different variations of spam which has been created because of this COVID situation, and start spreading across through emails. The phishing attempt is, phishing we call it. Phishing is not the FISHING, it's PHI, and it's almost similar to what you do as when you go for phishing. Meaning, a person sends an email to you to ask for information. So he will say that you are getting $1 million, or you are getting if you buy this you will get so much of free benefits and all those things. So some kind of enticing mails he sends to you, and then you click on it, and then he asks for some additional information, and that's where that's where you get caught, and that's a start area for security vulnerability coming into your network or in your IT systems. When you say Trojan is nothing but a kind of software, which is written in by an IT, by some person, and goes and sits in your desktop or your laptop or even in your mobiles, and it doesn't get activated immediately. After some time, it gets triggered. So it's silent for some time, and then on a particular event, it gets activated, and then it creates a havoc. Actually, majorly, you would have seen that in the recent, one of the largest IT company in India got attacked by one of the ransomware. So some of this combination of techniques could have been used, and ransomware is the latest technique which is being used by a lot of the hackers, wherein your systems. It's like you are they are hijacking your systems, and then they will ask for some ransom money, and only when that ransom money is paid to certain account in bitcoins or in other places, then they will release the system. So there are all more sophisticated attacks which is happening, and then we call it as a social engineering. Those are all common attacks. So if you can go to the website, you can, any of the Google, or you can find a lot of this kind of attacks which is happening, and it's getting more and more sophisticated with the kind of introduction of new technologies. So you need to be cautious. What it means is that you should not. That's why people say that don't download any unauthorized software, don't download any freewares, don't download any unlicensed software. So why? Because those are all the entry points don't download any BitTorrent and all those things, because those are all the entry points for you to get these kind of probable situations where it can be used for your system being hacked or bringing a lot of security issues into your IT systems. So what are these causes, as we say that to have this kind of security issues? Some of these causes, I would say, there are many causes, I would say, but these are some of the common causes which gets, when we do a lot of surveys, these are the common causes gets reported time and again, actually. One of the major causes is the lack of security awareness. What it means is that there is lack of awareness among the staff or among the people or among the users or among the people, public, whoever is accessing that particular technology or the systems. Awareness towards what are the do's and don'ts they should do when they have, so that they are able to use it cautiously. So that's a major awareness. So what people do or what organizations do is that they spread a lot of awareness. They keep doing a lot of training to those people to bring that awareness so that they use the technology in an appropriate manner. And if it's a typical corporate environment, people think that if it's a security is only bothered by an IT. No, it's not an IT issue alone. It's an issue for the entire organization. Be it at the ground level staff to the CEO, they have to understand that it is not an IT issue. It is not a technology related issue. It is an issue within the organization, and so they have to handle it in that particular manner. And the ethics of the organization, resistant to change, that is common to any people. Resistant to change, when you say that bringing in new technology, people think that I don't want to change it because this is very difficult for me to use. So there will always a resistance to change, and that resistance to change happens in the security also, environment also. People don't want to bring in a lot of controls. It's a common phenomenon. If you see that one of the departments which generally gets a kind of a second level of thing is that the internal audit department or the risk management people there, because they are the people who try to say that there is a risk. If you do this, there will be a risk. So if you do this, there will be a risk here. So people bring that, and generally people don't have that kind of temperament, saying that the internal audit or the operational risk or the risk management people always have a tendency to say no to things or talk about only risk, not about the business growth. So but then we need to understand that there any new things will bring in a lot of risk, but you need to mitigate those. We need to bring those kind of control to ensure that we are mitigating those risks. And then obviously a lot of new digitalization or technology bringing in to the organization comes along with that, comes a risk along with that as well. And then changing threat landscape. When we said about threat landscape, the nature of attack patterns, we talk about the external threats. So previously it used to be a person sitting in some area and trying to do some kind of virus attacks. And now everywhere the entire external landscape has been changed, and even people nation to nation has become a large threat now. It's a lot of cyber wars are also happening. So the entire landscape, the risk landscape is changing. So these are some of the common incidents which we have been getting across when we do these annual surveys by productivity across the organizations. So this keeps repeating. So but then the kind of variation or the kind of the level of threat, these kind of causes keeps changing to an organization to organization. So what it brings is that these threats or these security issues have an impact on your financial statement as well, directly or indirectly also. So this is where, as a chartered accountant, as a financial controller or a to be CFO, need to be aware of what are those kind of threats which is getting into that. So in a simple term, this is an illustrative slide which shows that how how an organization is dependent on technology, and how the financial systems is getting how the financial statements are getting reported using technology. So the lowest layer is the bottom of the slide. If you see, that lowest layer is IT infrastructure, where the people talk about IT network, operating system, the nuts and bolts of the IT. Then on top of it you have an ERP, which is an application or application A, B, C. It could be an SAP, Oracle, and all this sits on top of the infrastructure. And then you will have those ERP is having multiple modules, we call it, which is nothing but the multiple process, sales process, financial accounting process, the GL process, the the procurement process. So these are all the process which is nothing but the modules of an ERP. And then you have a report. When these processes generate transactions, those transactions goes into a general ledger, and from the general ledger you take a trial balance or a balance sheet or a financial statement for the organization. So if you see that underlying layer is the infrastructure and the ERP, which is helping you to get this financial statement. So these layers have to be protected in such a way that if you are adhering to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability principles at these layers, then obviously you are having a better assurance that the reports which is getting generated, or the statements which is generated on using this technology, or I mean, I would not say 100% reliable, or supposedly reliable. So you start building the controls around these layers. So those are some of the controls which people generally talk about, general controls or the physical controls, security controls, network controls, and all those things. So that's the aspect which we bring in. So these controls, when you bring in, you are assuming that, or you are probably thinking that your financial statements are having some certain controls embedded, because these are the tools which is helping you to get those financial statements. So what is the role of a chartered accountant now? Because we are a financial auditor, you might have thought about, that, so yeah, I am only an external auditor, I am a chartered accountant, I only know financial. So what is it for me in this particular technology or a digital environment? When we did this survey in 2019, because this is an annual survey which we do, we call it as an IT audit benchmarking survey, and we jointly do it with ISACA, which is one of the IT audit institute based out of US. They give the certification as CISA if you attend their institute and CISA. So we jointly do that annual survey, global survey, and we found that one of the top challenges currently in globally we are facing is the lack of skilled resources in the IT security or the IT audit area. So that's one of the tremendous potential we have as a chartered accountant, because as a chartered accountant, we understand risks, we understand controls, and we have to apply that on a technology environment. So that's the kind of the knowledge which we bring in, and that particular capability is generally not available with many of the kind of academics we have. So you are rightly placed to handle that, and that's where resource scarcity is available currently in the world. So you can be an IT auditor, you can do an DISA, which our ICA offers, or you can do a CISA, and then you can be an IT auditor. You can join an organization, be an IT auditor, to ensure that the controls at these levels are properly built in, so that your financial statements are getting reported properly. So that's one of the area which is where which we are having, which we are seeing a lot of growth area for an chartered accountant like us. Right. So I'm also with that present. I'm coming to that important aspect of as a chartered accountant, what are the role plays we can do? If you are, these are some of the areas. I am assuming that you are one. You will probably become one in these areas. You may become a board member. So when you become a board member, it's your important as an as a chartered accountant, you should ensure that you are talking about the cybersecurity issues at that board level, or you are the person. If you are an independent director, you should ensure that how the organization is managing the cybersecurity issues or IT security issues, because that's becoming the basis of their the operation, business operation, their entire manufacturing or business operations or financial statements are coming across the IT system. So you should ensure that if you are an independent director, if you are a board member, or if you are a board member of your own company, ensure that you're talking about this topic at that level. Or if you are a CEO, you need to ensure that you play adequate role in, and you give them adequate importance to the cyber security issues, because it's a virtual world. You cannot see your enemy, or you cannot see your hacker. So you need to ensure that you have to protect those things, and you need to ensure that you are giving a proper investment to that. If you are a CFO, because you are a financial controller, you have a good authority to ensure that the controls are not only within the financial statements or within your process areas. Controls are also built in your IT. So you are one of the user of the IT system. So you should ensure that how control this IT environment is. So you need to ask for those controls to be built by the IT people. So because the risk, how the what controls you can build in. So you need to ensure that you are giving right access to the right person, and it is available at the right time. So as a CFO, you can ask for it, and because you are the financial control of the organization, at the same time you need to be a role model as well. So you need to embrace and enforce those policies and procedures which an organization has been developing. And as a CIA, when I say a chief internal auditor, chief internal auditor, you can play a very important role by doing IT audits, by or by reviewing the IT controls, so that the organization, the operating controls within the organization is handled in a better manner. In fact, you would have come across, as young chartered accountants, IFC, which is very important, aspect which has been as part of the Companies Act. So when we do any IFC as productivity for any clients, we bring an IT person along with that, because now everything is in IT. So we will first look at the control which is built into the IT, if it's an ERP or if it's an the banking core application. We see that first whether proper controls, proper configuration, proper system has been built in that system, so that I am reliable to ensure that the data coming out of it is reliable for me. And that role can be played by a chief internal auditor if you are sitting as an employee within the internal audit department of the organization. So now every organization within their internal audit department has a person for IT audit, or should be aware of how to do an IT audit, and that is becoming a normal norms, because that's becoming the norm of the day actually. So you can definitely be playing that role as well. And as a risk consultant, or if you are a consulting, if you're joining a consulting company, where it is working on focusing on IT consulting or risk consulting, you help clients in identifying the controls, in identifying the risk and identifying the controls to mitigate those risks. So you can play in that role as well. So all these aspects can be, you can look at any opportunity that is available for you, because today's world is purely technology based, and you need to embrace that technology. And you need, at the same time, you have a hat of thinking of what are the risks can bring, the technology can bring, and you are better placed to, say that these are the controls we put in place. So with that, I come to the end of my session, and I am open to any questions. Thank you so much for the time.
हेलो मुर्तजा सर।
मिश्रा जी, क्वेश्चन है कुछ इनके लिए?
सर नहीं सर, क्वेश्चन नहीं है भी सर। ऑनलाइन हो नहीं सर, क्वेश्चन नहीं है सर एक भी।
Okay, may I request the participants, if you have any questions on the IT security side, you can put it in the chat box so that Kalyan can then answer them. May I also request Dhrubo to come on board? Dhrubo, if you can switch on. He's here. Very good. So Kalyan, really very grateful, and on behalf of WRC of ICI, we thank you for accepting our offer and joining us as a faculty today, and covering so well, like the various type of the qualification, the various opportunities, the type of work which a chartered accountant can do, and specialize on the IT consulting and the IT audit side. So really, thank you very much, and I request all the participants to carry with a loud applause in their own homes. Thank you, Kalyan. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And I'm open to any questions. Probably, the participants want to share any questions later. Feel free to share with you, so that I can answer them later. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Participants can write at wrc@ici.in, and we'll mail it to Kalyan, seek his answer, and again reply back to you.
Thank you to Muthusa and the team, helping me to be part of this, and thank you to WRC as well.
Thank you, Kalyan. Thank you. With that, we move into the next session on analytics, and Dhrubo, I request you to take it ahead from here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Murtaza, for having me once again in the WIRC session. It has always been a privilege and a learning from my side as well, talking to a lot of you. So our topic today is on analytics and RPA, right? What data analytics can do for an audit function, and how can robotic process automation also start making audit uh, more efficient and more optimized, right? And with that, I'll start talking about what we define as a next generation of audit. Now, Kalyan talked about the information security and the principles around it. Without your data being secured, there is no possibility of doing analytics or automation, right? So information security is perhaps of predominant importance, and thereafter looking at how you can make that process efficient. Now, if we talk about our next generation of internal audit model or our next generation of audit, right, we can break it down into three parts. Now, these three parts are related to governance, methodology, and enabling technology. Now, I will not talk much about the governance and the methodology part. I'll focus more on the enabling technologies. Now, before I move on to the enabling technologies piece, if you look at the methodology, we have heard the term continuous monitoring and high impact reporting multiple times. And if you walk into any of the internal audit function or with the business or the controls function, you would keep on hearing the need to continuously monitor the transactions which is happening, to have an eye to ensure that no fraud is happening, there is no weakness in the entire control infrastructure. So continuous monitoring and high impact reporting becomes more and more important as we move into this tech savvy next generation of our businesses, right? Now, when we talk about enabling technologies, these enabling technologies actually are helping us in understanding how we can make monitoring more continuous, how we can do a high impact reporting. Now, when we started the session with Kalyan, Murtaza had requested us to talk about the different tools which are available and the kind of certifications which you can do in the enabling technologies piece. Now, there are four kinds of enabling technologies which you can look at. The first one is advanced analytics. Now, by advanced analytics, we mean querying the transactions to figure out if there is any anomalies or if there are any exceptions. Now, there are a lot of tools which are available just for the purpose of doing that. You can use tools like ACL, for which there is certifications. You can use tools like IDEA, for which WIRC is trying to get a license and make it available. To use SQL, for which there is a lot of what should I say, tutorials which are available online. To look at R, again an open source tool which you can also use for the purpose of writing these analytical work programs. Now, whatever language you choose, the final output turns out to be a set of rows and columns, which is your anomalies and exceptions. And you should use some kind of a visualization tool like a Power BI, like a ClickView, like a Tableau, which helps you represent that information in a graphical fashion. Why is it important? Not just because the aesthetics of it, but what we have realized over a period of time, that visual audit is more powerful than going through a long list of rows and columns. When you represent, let's say, a duplicate payment, and with that duplicate payment, you give the information of the vendor who has made that duplicate payment, the time on which this duplicate payment has been made, and who actually benefited from this duplicate payment, which vendor, right? Now you can see an employee whether he has a tendency to pass on this duplicate payment to this vendor or a set of vendor over a period of time. So you can start kind of finding out patterns, something which you would not have seen if you would looking at rows and columns. So advanced analytics is a combination of these tools along with visualization. The next comes RPA. Now RPA has two kinds of usages when it comes to audit. The first is automating the process end to end. For that, we mean extracting the data if there is a need, to the extent of generating the evidences, creating the artifacts, and showcasing the results, which can finally be vetted by a human. So that end-to-end automation can be done by an RPA. Or there are a lot of cases, let's say in claims processing, where we are talking to our clients, and what we understand is there is a lot of physical documents which is available, and they cannot go through hundreds and thousands of physical documents just to read those documents and do a proper analysis. So RPA and OCR plays a very important role in converting these kind of raw physical documents into a digital format and thereafter running the tests itself. And there are again a lot of RPA tools which are available. The most common ones are UiPath and Automation Anywhere. Again, the basic level of certification is something which you can do going to their sites, which is UiPath and Automation Anywhere. And both Automation Anywhere and UiPath runs what is called as an university program. And we have been in discussions with Murtaza to see whether it can be made available to ICAI to a large extent. The third enabling technologies that we talk about is on process mining. Now, process mining is a way of auditors like us to understand what a process is. Now, it could have been very easy to go and ask a business process owner what a process actually is. But what we have realized is more often than not, the business process owner doesn't give the complete picture or the right picture. And we keep on going back and forth and understanding the process to generate an exception or an anomaly. Now, process mining as a technology helps you unearth what a process is from the digital footprints. And there are tools like Celonis. Even UiPath has a tool called Process Gold. There are tools called Minet, and there are a plethora of other tools which are now coming up, which helps you mine a process and thereafter generate exceptions, which helps the audit function to kind of get the process streamlined. And the final technology which we have is on machine learning and artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence and machine learning is a broad area, right? The few use cases which we are finding of AI/ML is one on image processing. Now, how can image processing be used for an audit function, right? So we were working with one of our global offices where the need was by an insurance company to look at the images after a cyclone has happened and see whether people are claiming based on actual damages. So the image is trying to recognize where there has been damages, where people cannot physically go and do that. So that's an usage of AI/ML. People also use NLP for the purpose of doing contract analysis, to learn from the contract, to see whether the contract is covering all the aspects, whether there are contradictory clauses which are written within the contract, so on and so forth, right? So machine learning and AI can have and will continue to have multitude of use cases as we keep on moving towards our next generation. The other case which I can think of is with customer care agents, right, where they are trying to understand from the voice what these individuals are talking to, how these individuals are talking to the customers, and if there can be certain corrective action which needs to be taken. So when we talk about enabling technologies, and Kalyan sometime back mentioned about how how Protiviti every year conducts a survey. And when we talk about a survey, we try to analyze from the chief audit executives across the world what they're planning to do with the governance side of things, with the methodology side of things, as well as with the enabling technology. So when we went and tried to understand what 2020 results tell us is, there are few people, around quarter of them which is currently have already undertaken the advanced analytics. And the number keeps on coming down as we move from advanced analytics to RPA to process mining to machine learning. But there are a lot of people who are evaluating and planning to undertake it within the next year. So if I look at this percentage, at least 50% have already started looking at advanced analytics, whereas 30% in most of these cases have actually got convinced that they need to take and they would go ahead with these enabling technologies within audit. All of these have their applications outside audit as well, but this is specifically to audit that they are planning to start using using it within their function. The next thing which we thought of understanding from them is to why do they want to use it, right? What in the entire gamut of things are what their function or where their organization believes the usage is, and more than one responses are permitted, so that's why you will see that this does not add up to 100%. Most of them felt that continuous auditing is the need of the hour, and they would use either machine learning or process mining or RPA or advanced analytics for doing continuous auditing. The next one was predominantly on real-time risk review. Then comes the identifying of the unknowns, the driving of the efficiency, and thereafter all the other factors. But the continuous monitoring auditing seems to be the primary cause, followed by the real-time risk review. Now, with this at the backdrop, what we thought made sense for people who are kind of evaluating whether analytics is the right step for their organizations is to look at what kind of analytical maturity within an audit function makes sense. Now, if you look on the top, it talks about the journey or the audit life cycle, starting from planning and risk assessment, moving to process walkthrough, to execution and ad hoc execution, which can be ad hoc or it can be continuous, to finally doing consulting and the reporting piece of it. And on the left hand side, you would see the increasing maturity an organization can or a function can move into. So today, this is the typical nature of things which people do. What they want to become is a problem identifier, to an assurance provider, to an insight partner, and an advisor. Now, this matrix which you see here talks about what an individual or what an organization's audit function need to do to drive analytical maturity within the audit function. Now, for example, if I talk about planning and risk assessment, there are clients, a global insurance client, where we are trying to do an automated assessment of their risk. So what we would do is we would write web crawlers, which would go and look at all the insurance sites or the government regulations which has come up related to insurance and see if there are any risk which pops up. And we will crawl, we will pull out that information for them, analyze that information and make it available to the audit team to finally understand whether it makes sense for them to kind of take necessary actions or not. Similarly, we talked about process mining, and the next what we will do, we will look at a particular video as to how process mining as a tool is helping the audit function. If we move on to ad hoc and continuous execution, a lot of people do what is called as integrated audits. What it means is when you are doing an audit, you will take certain data, let's say for procure to pay, in an Excel file, and you would just run a few tests during the audit life cycle itself. However, a lot of organizations have seen the downside of it. A, because the coverage is not great, and finally the linkages between different aspects doesn't come out. So people are slowly and steadily moving to a data analytics focused audit, which means that before you start an audit, run analytics to figure out what the issues are before you finally get started with an audit itself. Now, for different telecom operators which we have worked in India and across the globe, they follow a very similar pattern of using a data analytics focused audit. It is not continuous yet, but they kind of generate the audit exceptions before they actually start moving into an audit. The next kind of maturity level within data analytics is continuous auditing. And continuous auditing or continuous controlling is setting up your script in such a manner that it is always monitoring every transaction as and when it gets reported to see if it is an exception scenario, and if so, immediately raise a concern. Now, we also talked about the high impact reporting and the advanced visualization, so I will skip the rest of it, but what it tells is it is not easy to become the most advanced and audit function just by kind of taking the enabling technologies. There are certain steps, there are certain boxes which you would have to go through to make you more mature within the audit itself. Now, we talked about process mining at length, right? What we want to show you is how a tool like Celonis actually helps in the entire P2P process. So what you see here is a tool which is called Celonis. I know that you cannot hear the sound, so I will do a voiceover. What it tells you is a process for a function, for a company called, let's say, ABC, right? Now, what it talks about is this is how the most common occurring variant of P2P is. So what does the most common mean? It means that from the digital footprint, when we had created this particular process, the number of cases which follows this path is high. Is it the most optimal one? Perhaps no. But this is the most commonly followed path. And what is the path? Somebody creates a purchase requisition, then a purchase order is created, the purchase order is scanned, goods is received, invoice is scanned, the invoice is booked, and the process ends. Now, if you look here, it talks about only a percentage. This percentage is around 39% of these 279,000 cases. And we are only talking about one variant. If I press the plus sign here, it talks about the second variant. And if I plus again, it talks about the third variant. Now, what are these variants? These variants are the different paths the process has taken and what has been created using these digital footprints. Now, what has happened in one of the cases, when I click on the play button here, it will tell that in this case, the process starts, it goes to the change price, and then the received goods happens, which means that there is a price change which is happening in that entire process, which was not happening earlier. And I can keep on increasing the number of processes on the right hand side, and it will keep on changing the number of the percentage here, as well as the number of variants. Now, a number of variants of a P2P process which we are seeing here is as many as 565. When I keep on increasing that, it will show actually within an organization how many or what combination of processes is possible. Now, we thought it's just a marketing thing that the tool is using. When we started actually using the tool, we found that these 565 variants is on the lower side. We ended up getting 1,000 variants in organizations, which are telecom operators, which are banks, where the number of variants for a very simple process is so many that it is difficult to keep account. Now, how does it help the audit function, right? The audit function can look at certain process variants and can immediately understand that it is not the right process. For example, when we were looking initially, it talked about this particular path where a scanning invoice takes place before a purchase order is created. Definitely a wrong path. So there are different other ways also to look at the process. Rather than looking at how many cases actually flows through the process, I can also look at what is the throughput time, which means how much time does it take from moving from one activity to the other. Now, if I see here, printing and sending the purchase order and receiving the goods initially used to take 8 days. Now, just adding this particular activity, which is change price, it's a 7-day here and a 10-day here, which means that I have introduced a 9-day lag period just because of introducing one activity, which is change price. So it also helps us to understand where are the process bottlenecks. And I can keep on doing any kind of analysis by creating a dashboard. Again, a high impact reporting that we talked about actually helps us to dig deeper. Now, how can I dig deeper? I can choose one particular case where the scanning invoice is happening before the purchase order is created. I can kind of sort and see that IDS AG is the one where 9,000 cases exist where scanning invoice has taken place before purchase order has been created. Obviously, something is fishy, and I see a spike in the month of September and October. So I can keep on digging deeper, right? And I can keep on understanding and analyzing what is happening and why is it happening and who is actually allowing this to happen. At any point of time, if I want to look at the actual data, I can move on to what is known as a case table, and it will give me the backend information as to who was the individual, what was the purchase order about, and what amount has been kind of been okayed by them. And P2P is just an example. There can be n number of use cases which we can actually end up monitoring in process mining. Now, the beauty of what process mining is, it also allows you to define a process. So there is a place called a conformance checker where you can go and you can say that this is my process, a process with these allowable variations. This is a parallel path. This is the sequence that it must and has to follow. And you can run your entire process mining and say, tell me how much of my data conforms with what I believe should be and is the process. And it returns a percentage. If it says 70% or 80%, the remaining 20% are violations. And you can actually see what those violations are. Whether scanning of invoice is happening before a purchase order is created, or the payment has been made before an invoice is received. There can be many different variations, right? So it kinds of tells you all the violations and the percentage of the data which confirms. Now, how do we use process mining, right? How do we use CCM? Now, what we have understood over our continuous usage of process mining is it is one of the most important uh, parameters that we need to look at if we want to run a CCM program. Why? The primary reason is because it gives us an understanding as to how good or bad a particular process is. Now, what else does a continuous controls monitoring helps us to achieve? And this again is based on our survey and experience. It tells us what high impact points are within internal audit. It tells about the detection and the prevention of fraud. And finally, it also provides the guidance and supports to the business operations. Now, how does CCM process mining and all these enabling technologies help us do that? The first thing is we have a much more enhanced focus. When we say an enhanced focus, we are saying that we are looking at the entire set of data. And since we are looking at the 100% of the transactions, we are able to give a much more quantifiable results which is there. And the problem or the size of the problem which actually exists within the organization. And when you do the right problem identification and the quantification, the focus naturally increases on how to solve the problem. And there where audit starts to play a role of providing support to the business itself. Now, CCM also have a lot of impact on how we kind of internalize this entire thing. Now, when I say that, I mean that if we set up a CCM platform or a continuous controls monitoring platform using analytics, robotic process automation, process mining, we are kind of building in the intelligence of the auditors, of the business process owners into a system. And that helps us in kind of reducing the dependency on either the analytical guy who would run the tests or even the business process owner whom we would need to reach out every time to kind of help us explain the process. Now, once we have set up a platform, once we have started using analytics, we have the results at a click of a button, which means that we can start the audit right now at a click of a button, and we will have a ready set of exceptions with us. Now in that helps in auditors to kind of focus on the value additions rather than looking at the non-value added work which they were doing on extracting the data and everything else. And that in turn helps us in timely closure. It also helps us in continuous improvement on an overall basis because whatever insights comes out, we need to adapt as the process changes, and a continuous improvement also needs to be built in a CCM setup. Now, if I look at how the analytics has progressed and will progress over a period of time, we see that predominantly a lot of individuals are kind of looking at descriptive analytics, and descriptive analytics helps us understand or answer the question as to what is happening. What is happening can be what is the number of purchase orders, what is the total value of the purchase order. So it tries to understand and tell us what and who. Whereas if you move from descriptive to diagnostic, you start asking the question why it is happening. And in most of the analytical work program that we write using advanced analytics, we are trying to answer the question, why is it happening? We are trying to analyze or do an analysis of the root cause as to, is it happening because there is a collusion between the vendor and the employee, and there is a duplicate payment which is happening. So we are trying to understand the question, why is it happening, to kind of affect design level changes or to put controls in places where it does not exist. If we kind of move up the value escalator, right, we are moving away from a diagnostic analytics to a predictive analytics. Now, predictive analytics is the place where we are trying to look at the historical patterns and try to say what is going to happen. Now, looking at previous spends, looking at the fingerprint of a fraudster, we are trying to predict if a fraud can happen, or if this kind of a trend continues, are we going to see an exception happening in the next 6 days or 7 days, and what kind of controls can we immediately put in place, or can we start doing a proactive monitoring of those situations? So predictive analytics tells us what is more likely to happen. Now, the next two levels of analytics is the prescriptive and finally the cognitive analytics. Now, it is a little bit difficult, and I have not seen the usage of prescriptive or cognitive in audit yet. Now, what does prescriptive analytics mean is kind of taking an action based on prediction. An example of that would be Google's autonomous car. So if you are trying, when the car comes to a junction and it has to decide whether it is going to go left or right, it is trying to take a decision based on what it is predicting will be the time to reach its destination and the optimal time to reach its destination, and accordingly it takes a decision. That is prescriptive analytics. So if I see the organizations today and internal audit within the organization, a lot of them, maybe 70% of them, are in the diagnostic to descriptive range. And as people are kind of maturing in terms of their data, as they are maturing in terms of how to use uh, data themselves, they are starting to venture into the predictive piece of it. Whether we talk about doing image analytics, voice analytics, or anything of that sort, people are starting to move into the predictive domain now. But most are still stuck with descriptive and diagnostic. Now, we also kind of thought it would make sense for us to talk about the challenges which we face in using analytics or using RPA within, or rather the challenges which we face within the audit function, and how analytics and RPA can actually help us in this entire journey. Now, the first challenge which we face is on the physical documents which exist and people not able to analyze because of the physical documents. So we talked about the expense claims which a lot of organizations are not able to analyze because the expense claims is like a food bill, a grocery bill, a hotel bill kind of a things, and they are not digital in nature. So RPA actually helps you in kind of automating the entire data extraction piece and kind of analyzing the information post that. So physical documents and manual data processing can be taken care of by using RPA. The second part and the second challenge which we generally face is the quality of the data. Now, if there is a quality concern, we can run what is called as a data quality audit to find out how bad the quality of the data of an organization is. But if you start using automation, it to a large extent helps us in kind of putting the quality concerns at bay. We talked about visual auditing and the kind of looking at data using dashboards, right? So we have faced the challenge of people not getting a holistic view. When we start looking at how audit reports their numbers to the board audit committee or to any one of them, we saw that people do not get a holistic view and are not able to drill down or drill up as they would like to. So we started using what we call as visual representation of information using dynamic dashboards, where you can actually understand what is happening at a macro level, and you can dig down deep at a micro level in the same dashboard itself. So let's say we are talking about an audit, right? At a P2P level, we can give an understanding as to what is the kind of loss that we are talking from a financial exposure, from an operational efficiency, from a process compliance perspective. And for financial exposure, we can drill down to the specific KPIs which monitors them and what is the quantification of that financial exposure. So we can keep on drilling down deep into a KPI and then to a transaction level to go from a macro to a micro view, and that have started helping audit organizations. The fourth challenge which we face a lot and we highlighted, and the reason we took you through the process mining demo, is we find a lot of false positives. Whenever we used to run a CCM or an audit analytics program, the first time we ended up running it, we would get a lot of false positives, primarily because our understanding of the process was not complete. And that happens predominantly because the process owners themselves are not aware of all the nitty-gritties of the process itself. So we started using globally a tool which helps us mine the process. We use tools like Celonis, Papna, Mineit, and others, which actually helps us understand what the process actually is and how many such variations are and what should be the logic to look at all variations. So using that, we have been able to kind of curtail the false positive to a large extent. And finally, the trainings and expertise of the auditors also is a challenge. Now, in the initial slide, we talked about three aspects of governance, methodology, and enabling technologies. Governance talks about the need of the audit function to also be technology savvy. Now, when we are talking about creating a CCM program, an audit analytics program, ultimately it is kind of run by the audit team themselves, and it is expected that they should be able to understand and also pick up some of those aspects where they can run it by themselves. And we have found it to be a challenge, but as we kind of move forward, we see more and more of the audit function kind of picking up things like process mining, picking up things like RPA, analytics to kind of help them continuously improve what is already developed. And in certain cases, also coming up and developing such scripts and programs. But otherwise, we have faced that to be a challenge itself. Now, I know Murtaza wanted me to end in another 5 to 10 minutes, so I would quickly talk about two aspects: what RPA is all about and how we can use RPA in kind of IT controls testing. Now, what this video talks about is what is robotic process automation, right? Now, robotic process automation is it's kind of prevalent across all organizations. And when we say all across all organizations, we talk about it enabling the organizations and users and making tasks automatic rather than manual. What we have been able to achieve over the last 10 to 15 years is a lot of automation across multitudes of ways, right? And RPA in itself, and this is perhaps the key, it is non-invasive, which means it acts exactly like a human acts on the screen. It kind of mimics what a user does, whether it's kind of launching a program, it is kind of uh, taking or extracting data out of let's say an email and putting it into something. It is what the human is doing. RPA is doing the same. Now, the way organizations can actually look at RPA is to kind of establishing those RPA capabilities and building automation at the same time. What we have seen is RPA can make a process or an organization more efficient. It gives higher quality of data at source. It reduces the total cost of ownership of any process. It increases productivity and it increases flexibility. And these are the, and RPA is definitely sustainable, right? It is, a lot of people talk about RPA as a band-aid solution, which is if there is a process gap, you use RPA to kind of mend the process here and there. But RPA can be an end-to-end process where kind of automate a business function and kind of create all the aspects. But what you would have to keep in mind is RPA being a technology function, it has to have its own infrastructure, security, software, and change management needs. And that's what RPA, it may not be as complicated as an ERP function, but end of the day, it's a technology function and the proper infrastructure and security should be there. And a lot of places, people after implementing RPA have started even now auditing the RPA itself. But like any other software, change management of RPA also becomes very important because it has kind of created the process, it has automated the process, and we are trying to kind of keep the process alive. As long as there are changes, you would need to bring in the changes back into the RPA life cycle. The way we do it is we design, build, deploy, optimize, and finally kind of look at how the automation opportunity leads to a better ROI. Now, what we have done in this case for audit is we have looked into the change management testing process and how a tool like an UiPath is helping in the SOX IT controls testing. What it does is, let me fast forward. So what this test actually talks about is there has been certain user access, or there has been certain product test which has happened, and people had gone through the UAT test plans where they have received sign-ups. Now people has to look at what those sign-ups were, who has implemented, whether they have received the proper sign-ups, and can that be concluded, that particular process can be concluded. So as the entire process, what an individual does is it goes and it identifies the population, it extracts all the artifacts which are required, it populates the testing artifacts in an Excel sheet, and then finally reviews and tests the results. What the bot does is it automates the first three steps, which is it goes and identifies the population on which it will run the test. It extracts the related artifacts, it populates them in an Excel file, and finally prepare the testing results, which is manual. Now what it is doing is it's logging into the SharePoint to identify the population on which it will run the test. Now the population is nothing but a set of change request IDs. Once it has received the change request IDs, it will start logging in to the SAP's Charm site, which is the change management site where it stores what the change request is all about. And once it goes there, it puts the SIR ID or the change request ID, and it starts extracting whatever the change request has been. So it is extracting the artifacts and creating the evidences that a change was requested and what was the status of the change. It would also go in as the next step into the emails, and will start downloading the sign up from those emails and also keep them in a particular folder. So in this case, it's going and kind of extracting the sign ups and the people who have provided those sign up and putting them in a particular format in a folder. And this is where it is kind of populating the testing attributes. So it goes which process area, what was the correction number which was required, what was the correction type which was required, and also who had finally approved the kind of tests or finally signed off on these change requests. Once you have received this information, or once an individual received this information, they have to review the test results manually. Now the entire process actually kind of creates the entire artifacts and everything, but the entire process initially used to take more than 16 hours of kind of extracting the artifacts and around 10 hours of manual controls testing. So individual would spend 26 total hours just to do 25 change requests. Now it has reduced to 1 hour and 4 minutes, and you can definitely see that there are 25 hours of kind of saving which is there. Now the value of the ROI of doing the entire activity using an RPA program is primarily the quality, the testing cycle, the testing time, and the coverage. Now, because you're not using an automated tool or an RPA program, you can kind of create some, or you can have the test done much quickly. And since you can do the test done much quickly, you can cover much more. So you get done 25 or 10 times more than what you were doing before. So definitely RPA has made the process efficient and kind of also has made it higher quality. The last thing I wanted to show before we conclude is we talked about, let's say, accounts payable and running analytical walk programs. So these are the final outputs that you see when you kind of run an analytical walk program on an RPA or process mining. You see these dashboards, whether in your system, whether in your iPhones, whether in your phones, whether in your iPads. You see dynamic dashboards which helps you kind of unearth what the problem is all about, and the list of analytical walk programs that you can run uh, runs in thousands and thousands. And what we have looked at by doing more than 50 to 60 processes across different organizations is that around 1000 to 2000 tests can be run across all these processes, which helps you monitor these controls weakness and finally give these dashboards for the business to actually uh, make life easier for them. These talks about how data science can kind of help you solve the business problems of the audit function, right? You can use risk assessment or social intelligence. You can do risk qualification within the risk assessment uh, process stream. You can do image analytics, statistical sampling for your planning and sample selections. You can do virtual inspection using drone technologies. You can use voice analytics to understand how people are talking to you. You can use NLP to do contracts analysis. And even in the reporting and follow-up, you can do NLP based report writing. So we came across a tool called vPhrase, which kinds of looks at your dashboards and kinds of writes a report out of this dashboard itself. So there are NLP based report writing which is also there. So as I said, the number of applications of data science is increasing within the audit function, and in the coming days we expect it to kind of increase further. So that's all, folks. I don't have anything else. So I will stop sharing my screen and I will take any questions if there are.
Mishra ji, questions? Hey, coach. As we try to do the vote of thanks and move to the next session, I request all the panelists and the panel moderator also to please come on. So Dhrubo, for you, how to automate in medium-sized CA firm?
See, whether it's a medium size or a large size CA firm, right? The best way to do is to figure out the areas where a lot of repetition exists. And even RPA is not a very expensive proposition always. So you can look at the RPA journey in smaller chunks and you can keep on implementing smaller portions and make the entire process automated. How to automate? Again, you have to go through and do a process understanding to see. The smaller the size or the medium the size, it is easier to automate, which means the processes are not complex enough and it would help in the entire journey. But yes, again, we have to look at what the processes are.
So I will touch on that, Dhrubo. Allow me a few seconds.
Sure,
So recently, WIRC, and I'm sure the chairman will also talk about it. He's also joining us. So WIRC has come up with tools which can be used by small and medium-sized firms, and these are like to do with direct tax, indirect tax, etc., and a day-to-day operation type of a thing. And those are available now on WIRC website free of cost for members to use. So you can use all of them there, and these are like analytics type. Again, in addition to that, there are a lot of chartered accountants, young guys who are like working on various tools, and we are talking to them, looking at the demo, and we are also like bargaining and coming out with a price. So one is like a cloud-based data place where you can put your data and share with your team members, etc., and for audit purposes. Now, through Jignesh, one young team has come across and they have developed a software on getting balance confirmation and reconciliation. So there are a lot of stuff. If you look at the last 3 months newsletter, you will get a lot of stuff there as well. So that's it on my side. Dhrubo, your second question. What should be some of the qualifications that a fresher CA focus on to enter into this area?
See, if you're asking to get into automation, there are certain courses both on the business analysis side of things as well as on the technical side of things. You can do either of them to get into automation by any of the automation vendor providers, right? If you're looking to get into analytics, you should focus on getting some kind of certifications in IDEA or Tableau, or let's say for that matter ACL, to kind of pick it up and start focusing on that. These are certifications which will help you understand a tool, but end of the day, being a CA, you understand the process better than a technology guy does, and that is your forte. Technology is only gonna enable you to understand how to code, and for that you can pick up any particular tool and learn to code from there itself.
The
And
third
I
one,
believe,
yeah,
yeah,
you can read that.
yeah, is RPA? It is not, right? IT automation. So if you ask, and Kalyan is also here from my organizations, IT automation or IT strategy is a much bigger uh, bigger part of it, right? And when you talk about the entire digital transformation, IT automation is looks at the entire gamut of things, where RPA looks at certain areas which, let's say, you've already invested in certain activities. You need part of the processes to be automated, which is repetitive in nature. You use something like an RPA, and there has always been a constant discussion as to whether RPA, whether BPM, whether IT automation, and many things. There is a lot of a difference. You use RPA when a process is not is maybe it's gonna change over a period of time, but you should focus on BPM. It is kind of a standard process, and you will see a lot of organization focuses on BPM rather than RPA itself. But again, it's a thin line, and it is getting thinner every day.
Great, Dhrubo. Thanks a lot, Dhrubo, for joining today, spending your
Thank you.
valuable time, sharing your knowledge with the participants. And on behalf of WIRC, I wish to thank you, and I request all the participants to carry it with a loud round of applause for Dhrubo. With that, friends, and to the participants again, we have all the 5 experts here, 4 panelists, 1 moderator, and they will also can give you a lot of insights. So please keep on putting your questions. As we complete the panel in the last 10-15 minutes, we'll take the questions to the panel as well. And in any case, if you have something else, you can write a mail to wirc@ici.in, and we'll seek answers from the experts and come back to you. So we also have a chairman, C. Lalit Bajaj, here. Before I request him, let me just welcome everyone. So first, let me welcome the finance man here, S. Parthasarathy, chartered accountant. Partha
Right.
is currently at Naira, and he is done lot of transformation in the finance. So when people say कि accountant का जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगा, Robert ही सब कर लेगा, तो Partha is the man. He will tell us whether Robert will do or accountant will do something or not. Then we
Yeah.
have Jignesh, again CA Jignesh Kenia. He is with Times Now, and he is on the operations side. He is not on the finance side also. Or operations में Jignesh has done a lot of stuff on data analytics, etc. So he will also share a lot of knowledge and various use cases. So Jignesh, welcome. Then let me move on to the 2 auditors, Rajesh Bhatia ji. And Rajesh Bhatia is currently the Chief Audit Executive for Sun Pharma. And he comes with massive experience, and he is also using a lot of next-gen audit and tools in his audit on a daily basis. The next is CA Sanjay Deodhar. And Sanjay has himself coded. So although he's a chartered accountant, but I think he's become a software coder or the programmer, and he's done a lot of tools himself as well. And he will talk you through about a lot of his hands-on experience. And he was with Thermax and now currently with Cummins. So huge organizations. And then I come to the moderator, Chetan, and he is also with JSW Steel in the Internoid department. And Chetan is a very dear friend of ICI. He supports us in all our initiatives, all our programs. He is a hardcore ICI, what do you say, Karyakarta, as I will call him. So Chetan bhai, welcome.
Namaskar, sir. Namaskar. Thank you.
I also once again thank both the speakers, Kalyan and Dhrubo. And now I request Chairman WRC for his few words of wisdom. Chairman, over to you.
Yeah. My dear friend Chetan Thakkar, all the experts on the subject and the speakers who have just deliberated for the last 1.5 hours. At the outset, I welcome all of you. And as far as today's subject is concerned, this is IT security, data analysis, robotics, the new age tools. Let me share with all of you and all the participants that this year WIRC have engaged into various workshops. If I would like to just name couple of them, we have completed workshops on Tableau design, desktop training, G Suite, Google Workspace. Then we have done on Python, business intelligence. So what I'm trying to tell you is at WIRC, this is the genre wherein we have tried to and dared to enter. And let me tell at this point of time that our chartered accountant fraternity has supported largely in organizing these programs by participating. So what I wanted to tell through this message to the panelists is, I think so this is the subject wherein our chartered accountants are serious about it. At the same time, we have to give them proper insights wherein they can really develop themselves as a thorough professional when they are providing services related to this area. We are conducting various programs. Likewise, in the first week of December, we are starting with data management using tools, MySQL, R and Excel. So there are a lot many things. I would request the participants to share your suggestions with WIRC so that we can plan more and more such kind of events. We have started working on one publication related to data analysis, and this will be shortly be available for all the members on WIRC website. It will be freely available as e-publication. Over and above this, WIRC have tried to tie up with various software service providers who are developing such kind of tools which are used by chartered accountants. I would request the panelists and the participants that if you are familiar with some tool which is really relevant for large number of chartered accountants, please we will deliberate with them and we will try to ensure that we can pass on significant benefits to our members at large. So I, Murtuja bhai, we all are available. You can contact us at any point of time, or you can write to us at wirc@ici.in so that we can really make all these resources available to all our members at a very reasonable cost. With this, I welcome all of you, the expert panelists, my dear friend Chetan bhai, and all the participants, the young and wonderful participants in this very apt and very wonderful session, which we are really looking forward to understand a lot of things through this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman, for your kind words. And with that, we are ready to get started with the panel. Chetan bhai.
Yeah, sure, sir. Sure.
Yes, please. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much. Good evening, friends. This is Chetan here. I am your host for the day and would moderate this session. And warm welcome to all my participants here today on a very pertinent and relevant topic ongoing, the new age and tools and techniques. And before I start, let me convey my sincere gratitude to Lalitji, Chairman of WRC, and Murtuza Bhai, Chairperson of Internal Audit Committee, for allowing me to moderate, giving me opportunity to moderate this session, along with the learned speaker, galaxy of the speakers with me. Thank you so much, sir. So my one small request before we kick off start the session, which will go around 60 to 70 minutes. Let's remember Lord Ganesha and Ma Saraswati, who can bless us, all of us, with the discussion we'll be having it and bring out the good learning to be remain with all of us. So friends, as you all know that we are into the VUCA world, and the world is very fast changing. And you know, now we all are in the new normal scenario, and there is a lot of disruption to the technology. Uh, in a various way, it should definitely affected to each one of us. So we brought to you the Galaxy speaker, who are the thought leaders from the large industries. I think Murtuza ji already had convey. We have Rajesh bhai from Sun Pharma. We have Partha from Naira Energy. We have Sanjay ji, who is from Cumis, and I'm Jignesh ji. I'm not saying it. He's around there. Jignesh ji. I'm not seeing him on a video. He's around there.
I
Okay,
will
fine. Yeah,
I will
I think
call him on his
Jignesh.
mobile. Yeah, he may
Sure,
join
sure.
in again.
Absolutely no issue. Meanwhile, so Sanjay ji is with us from Cuminis. And friends, let's quickly introduce ourselves. See, myself, Chetan Thakkar, I will be moderating for the session. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a fellow chartered accountant. I'm certified intern audit from US. I have information system auditor. I'm certified in the financial market. I'm certified in the risk management. I'm pursuing my certified fraud examiner from US. I had done my management courses from IIM Ahmedabad and done EMBA from Harvard US. So total 25-year experience. Currently working with JSW since last 5 years. In past, I worked with the large corporates like Lafarge Holcim, Ambuja ACC. I had worked with the Prism Cement and had an experience of working with the large consulting firm as a director in the past. And in all, throughout my total journey of last 25 years, where I started my career from Kimji Kuarji, one of the large size firm in Mumbai. Last 25 years, I am into internal audit, risk management, compliance, corporate governance. That's my core area which I'm pursuing all these years. So this is a small introduction about me, and I'm a passionate internal and risk management risk manager. So over to Rajesh bhai. I would appreciate each one of my panelists would self-introduce themselves and talk about the journey they have it and their current profiles. So over to Rajesh bhai first.
So good evening, friends. I am Rajesh Bhatia. I have about 29 years of experience of working with the heavy engineering, automobile sector, and most predominantly the healthcare sector, various verticals of healthcare like medical devices, animal healthcare, or now, say for example, the pharma industry. So currently, I am heading the global internal audit function of Sun Pharma. So welcome to this session, and I hope we can share something which would be of value to all the participants in this webinar. So over to you, Chetan.
Yeah, thanks. Now I'll request Sanjay ji to introduce himself. Sanjay ji.
Yeah, thank you, Chetan. I would first like to thank the members of WRC for considering me as a panelist for this kind of session, and I'm truly honored. I've been a chartered accountant for past 25 years, and coming back to the institute is always a homecoming sort of thing. As of now, I am the audit director for Cummins for India region and Asia Pacific region. Prior to that, for almost 11 years, I was heading the audit function for Thermax Limited, which is a very large engineering company. And prior to that, I was in practice. And I was working as a partner in one of the large Indian firm, BK Khare and Company. And I've been doing audits throughout my professional career, and I enjoyed thoroughly. And I hope the participants who have joined here also have enjoyed. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Now over to Partha. Partha would like to introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chetan. Thank you, Chetan. Good evening, everybody. I am Parthasarathy. So, and I'm a chartered accountant by profession, and I have other degrees. Currently, I'm the Chief Accounting and Transformation Officer for Naira, and I am responsible at Naira for managing the finance, accounting, taxation, insurance, and the digital transformation. Before coming to Naira, I have been working with IBM as a associate director, and I was in charge of the cognitive finance for the Asia Pacific region. So in terms of the robotics, blockchains, etc. So we have been handling, and as part of the profile, I have been handling multiple major conglomerates, the transformation process. Before that, I was with Hindustan Petroleum and HMEL, both are on oil and gas, because I have a stint of both oil and gas and technology. I have a 20 plus years of experience, and I have been also associated with the institute, and I've been visiting faculty on the financial forensics part. So good to be back, and whatever we have, and we can share, and we will be a testimonial for you all to say that like you can always venture into these kind of new age technologies, and still you'll be able to survive. Thanks, Chetan.
Thank you, Partha. Haji.
I spoke to Jignesh. He is having some problem with his laptop. We will join in. You can get started. Yes.
Absolutely no issue. So
when
thank you all.
Yes.
Sure, we'll do that. Let him join it. We'll introduce him. So thank you so much, all the Galaxy speakers, and I'm assuring you to all my participants, each one of you, the next 1 hour would be a very quite insightful, engaging, and definitely you will be getting a set of knowledge out of the discussion we'll be having it. So till time Jignesh join us. We'll start with the Sanjay ji. As you all know that we are passing through last 8 to 9 months, the pandemic is everyone is get affected one way or other way, and we being as a profession as a auditor, internal auditor primarily, so there are a lot of changes happening. The way we used to do audit, way we used to draw the plan, way we used to do audit, way we do our field audit. So, and the expectations also change from our stakeholders. Our key stakeholders are audit committee members, the top management, CFO, CEO, and the top management. Those are our primarily the core stakeholders. So their expectation have been changed, Sanjay ji, all this time from the internal auditor, mainly due to the impact of the technology in general, and the way we are using more, although we were using it, but now we are using more on the newer age of the technology analytics in particular. So would you just like to throw light on that, please? Over to Sanjay ji, please.
Yeah, sure, Chetan. See, I have been having a kind of ringside view for almost 20 years into the proceedings of audit committees, and I can assure you that a lot of things have changed over the past 20 years. I would just like to give you and the participant here my take on the past 20 years, and I would like to break it into 3 phases. The first phase is from the year 2000 to 2010. Now, if you look at that particular phase, internationally as well as in India, a number of governance frameworks to improve the workings of the board of directors, including those of audit committees, were established. To name a few, COSO, then Kumar Mangalam Committee, Mangalam Birla Committee recommendations, Narayan Murthy Committee recommendations. Now, in my opinion, the internal audit, from an internal audit standpoint, these frameworks and the recommendations of the committee, are sort of fountainheads of internal audit practice, which we see it as of today. In a sense, these frameworks and these recommendations actually helped internal audit to give a seat at the table, so to speak. Now, during this particular phase, because of this governance requirements, recommendations kicking in, the audit committee, which was of course usually made up of mostly the independent directors, wanted internal audit to start focusing on a larger picture. That is, essentially move away from transaction type of audit, say like we used to typically do audit of purchases, or which we used to call as purchase vouching. Now they wanted us to start moving from that kind of concept to audit purchases, but audit procure to pay in the context of the business objectives and not just the audit objectives. And also during this period, there was a huge push from the members of the audit committee to involve internal audit in enterprise risk management framework, which during that period, as I see it, was, I mean, it was still finding its feet insofar as India, in the Indian context is concerned. And also one important aspect which was happening during this period of 10 years was a very large scale investment in IT infrastructure. IT infrastructure in the sense IT systems like ERPs, etc. was made. As a consequence of these investments, naturally, we as internal auditors were required to go through a lot of data, understand the IT systems, and therefore the emergence of various types of desktop audit softwares came. Desktop database languages such as SQL, they became very critical, for internal audit. And I also see that most of during this particular time frame, most of the data was in a structured form. In a sense, the data was collected in the database and stored in tables in the form of rows and columns. So that is my take on the first phase of, say, first phase in 10 years. Then the second phase, if I want to define it, will be from, say, 2010 to 2015. And during this period, I believe the concepts of ERM were fairly embedded in most of the large organizations. And now the audit committee actually wanted internal audit to connect the internal audit planning, connect the internal audit planning with the outcome of risk management activity. Now, why they were asking us to do this was essentially they wanted to understand whether the mitigation controls that the enterprise risk management has recommended and is in the process of implementation is actually working on ground level, whether it is actually happening or not. And also on the technology side, during this period, cloud computing started emerging, concepts of big data started playing out very strongly. Smartphone was with everyone, and in a sense, I would say server level technologies were literally in your hands in that sense. And as a result of all this, one of the key item in the as an agenda item in most of the board meetings and also of the audit committees was how to leverage this technology for internal audit. Now, during this period, I also saw that the desktop audit tools had matured, but believe me, they were no match for the ever increasing data volume and also the complexities of the data types. Because of this explosion of app culture and app marketplace and big data and the variety of data which was getting generated, quite a significant amount of data which was generated was actually in an unstructured form and not in a typical structured form that like you are used to see in a database environment. And these desktop tools really were not able to handle this kind of unstructured data. And this unstructured data is also very important from a business standpoint, and therefore these kind of changes were emerging. And in the last 5 years, what I have started seeing is that the members are no longer interested to see a 3 years rolling audit plan, 5 years rolling audit plan. All what they want is to see a continuous auditing and control monitoring mechanisms to be put in place, where the deviations from internal controls are flagged in real time or say near real time, aren't taken up for audit immediately. So that is a very different scenario that we are now in the last 5 years engaging. These are the kind of conversations that we keep on having with most of the audit committee members. And why we are having these kind of conversations is very important for us to understand. During this past 5 years, if you see, technologies such as cloud computing has matured significantly. Concepts of data lakes, like for big data, distributed computing, we now talk about in WIRC, as the chairman has already said, we have got courses for programming languages as Python. We have got data visualization tools like Power BI, Tableau, Clicks. They have become extremely powerful, and most importantly, they are very easily available. Then there are variety of open source data analytics tools. In a sense, self-service analytics is really, in my opinion, here. I mean, who would have heard the term data scientist? We all can visualize scientist, but data scientist, I don't know. I mean, I never thought of any such of concept of data scientist. So we are living in a completely different world. So in a sense, I wanted to, summarize my take on the past 20 years ringside view that I had for the various audit committees conversations. And in my opinion, if you look at in the next 5 years time frame, data privacy will be the biggest challenge, and it is the biggest thing that needs to be looked at. And we as internal auditors or chartered accountants are ideally placed to understand the nuances of data privacy and also assess the controls around data privacy. So in short, the impact of these newest technologies has been tremendous, mind blowing in my opinion.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. Thank you for the greater insights. And welcome now, Jignesh is with us. I request quickly Jignesh bhai to have quick introduction about him. So we'll take it forward our session. Over to Jignesh bhai.
Sure. Sorry for the inconvenience. There was some connectivity issue. So just quickly, I'm a chartered accountant and company secretary. Currently working with Times Network, which is the TV arm of Bennett Coleman Company Limited. I look after 4 functions: digital transformation, corporate strategy, revenue assurance, and broadcast technology. Prior to that, I worked with UTV, which was then acquired by the Walt Disney Company. I was the CFO for the broadcast vertical. And in addition to that, I handled 2 functions, which was again strategy, and second was commercials. Before that, I worked with KPMG for 4 years in Muscat, and interestingly handling tax, audit for all foreign companies who used to come to Muscat for the first 3 years, and also advising them on the structuring. So that's a quick introduction from my end. I mean, moving from a CFO, to looking after digital transformation. Yeah.
Excellent, Jignesh. So now I have a now complete galaxy of speaker. The combined wisdom is 100 plus years, right? So putting all 4 together. So Sanjay ji has very nicely explained us how last 2 decades things have changed, business has changed, technology have changed, and how internal audit needs to align with that, leverage with that. Now I'm coming to Rajesh bhai. Rajesh bhai, as the expectation have changed by our stakeholders, I'm sure now internal audit cannot afford to do what they are doing in the past, the 2 decades before. Technique has to be changed. You being a part of a Sun Pharma, being in a global organization with the multinational footprints, so how do you take care of those change? A kind of the techniques you have changed over last 2 decades, as rightly explained by Sanjay ji. So what are the things you have done it differently to match the a kind of technology disruption, to see that risks are monitored also periodically and things are under control, and internal audit can keep a greater assurance to the management. So over to Rajesh bhai.
Yeah, thanks, Chetan. So I think Sanjay has given a very good overview and sort of a roadmap or the road that we have traveled in the last 20 years. Well, on top of that, I would say that just like 3 rules of accounting still continue to remain the same, so the principles or the rules of audit also remain the same. However, these need to be aligned with, let's say, not only the changing technologies, but also the expectations of the management and the audit committee. And let me bring out one of the big challenges any CAE faces in today's world is that at times management expectations and audit committee expectations may not be sort of aligned. Management wants the priority areas of the management might be slightly different from what the audit committee expects. And of course, a lot of onerous responsibilities have been put on the audit committee and the independent directors. So they are expecting more and more from the internal audit. Now, as Sanjay rightly pointed out, how do we measure the risk? So audit committee really wants an assurance whether all the risks that are significant to an organization, whether those are being really mitigated or not. Because as a general practice, if you do a survey, let's say, or if you talk to the risk owners, they would say that obviously, the risk is mitigated or is an advanced stage of mitigation. But usually audit committee wants an independent assurance from the CAEs that indeed those risks are mitigated and the mitigating controls are working continuously in an effective manner. So what has happened is that, while the rules remain the same, doing a process walkthrough, identifying the underlying risks and testing the effectiveness of the controls over a period of time, with the introduction of technology, let's say, several organizations, both large and mid-sized, have sort of moved from standalone systems to, let's say, one ERP system. So that ERP system is so advanced that almost, all the processes are housed in that ERP and interlinked with each other. So you can start from the start and end, or you can start from the end and go to the start. So that is the way the entire process is linked. What as internal auditors we must do is to optimize the use of these technologies. We must understand the business process, number one. And as auditors, we cannot ignore the underlying technologies that are being used. So earlier when we talked about, let's say, internal audit, we used to talk about, let's say, manual controls. Now, if I have to look at the process, and I'm really at the tools and techniques point here, if we have to look at the process, the controls have broken up into three parts. One is the manual piece, which are far and few between now. One is the automated piece, which form a significant chunk of the controls. And the third one is the hybrid, where large part of the activities is done manually, but some of the review controls are performed manually. So we have these ERPs and the entire world is working on the same ERP and the same instance. So the transactions are residing in one system. So how do we utilize that? How do we utilize that ERP to, let's say, to churn out exceptions? The system would give us those exceptions, number one. And it will also flag what are the significant risks that are there in the system as of now. So as Sanjay correctly said, it is near real time or real time. On a near real time or real time basis, we see those risks changing or the risk profile of the organization changing. So I think as a rule, we should not forget that we need to understand the business, we need to understand the processes, but at the same time, we cannot ignore the ERP. And the rule of the game is how to optimally utilize the ERP so that we keep a eagle's eye over the risk evolution or the changing risk profile across the globe for various entities, especially the material ones at least. So that is my message to the young people who are the participants.
Yes, thank you, Rajesh. Very rightly identified. Internal audit cannot afford to do things the way you used to do in the past. They have to realign with the business. They have to see what are the business risks. They have to see how whatever technology used, maybe AI or maybe RPA or maybe using marketing CRM. So auditor cannot afford to do his own plans in isolation. They have to synergize with the business. They have to review the tools, techniques used by the business has to necessarily review. Without that, we will not able to give the enough assurance. Very nicely explained and summarized, Rajesh. Thank you so much for your insights. So
Sure.
my next question to Parthaji. Parthaji, I am hearing a lot about this digital transportation. Just last maybe couple of years, we are hearing a lot. There is a digital transformation happening in XYZ large companies, and that has become a buzzword, all around. So I'm sure along with me and my participant wanted to know from you, you being a subject expert, what is it all about digital transformation? Could you throw some light to all of us? Over to Parthaji, please.
Sure, Chetan.
Yeah,
See,
please.
the way in which I'll start is a transformation is a continuous process, be it digital or a change. Like we have been talking about the way in the internal audit space has changed, right? The transformation is a phase, and always you require a hype to have the adoption done. So what I will call it as a digital transformation is a kind of a hype word which allowed everybody to embrace. I think in today's journey, I think every one of us have gone through a digital transformation. It has touched all our points. Be it a demonetization, we moved from a monetary, a real cash to a digital cash. Today in the pandemic, we have all embraced the work from home technologies. We were risk aversive, but I think there is the push, and the abruptness of this pandemic has pushed us to take those transformations. So the transformation can be a phased manner, can be an abrupt, can be pushed onto you. So, but that's the reality of this life, right? So that's the key thing. I think it's all about how to make it adaptable. That's the reason why it has become a buzzword. I will call it as we have always been used to it. We have gone through the days of the computers, right? The computers which was an XT and AT, and today we are just living in a world. So it's a huge transformation, correct? It's a digital transformation. If you call when we started our journey, or when all the panelists were young, to get the phone, it was really a challenging one. If you have a hand phone in your house, it is a prestige, right? Today it's all about, we have seen those changes. The transformation is so quick to catch up, right? And in terms of the business, definitely I think the previous panelists have touched upon the fact that there is a manual and a digital mode. I think the more the business moves on to embrace the digital technologies to convert those things into a digital man, it helps in terms of reduction of efforts, in terms of the accuracy of the transaction, and it becomes a single source for truth. Even in today's parlance, we are moving ahead to a faceless assessment. We would not have thought through 5 years before, right? So this has been part of a journey, and I think the world is fast catching up. I think there is nothing to worry. We are all part of it, and I think we need to understand that yes, we are part of it, and we can do it. And and technology moves on, right? And whatever the old technology yesterday it was, that it is no longer there, right? And also today, when we are talking about actually like a blockchain, etc., I think even the institute is talking about like how to audit something which is coming on from a blockchain, right? So I think it's a very progressive way of moving ahead, and I think what I would conclude is that the digital transformation will give a lot of opportunities to us, and so long as we are good in our basics, and we are able to contribute to those transformation part, there are a lot of opportunities. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Parthaji, giving a greater insight with a lot of practical examples. And you rightly summarize digital transformation is definitely to help the business. It will reduce the transaction time. It will even help in cost efficiencies. And one cannot afford to, we being in the domain auditors, we have to get it adaptable, agile to that as early as possible. We cannot able to disconnect to that. We have to integrate with that, understand the greater benefit out of this, and that's why we will able to contribute more, not only as an assurance, we can also become a good contributor as an advisor and consulting into that once you get into that. Thank you so much. Now over to Jignesh, our other subject matter expert in data transformation. Although Parthaji has very nicely explained about the data transformation, but if I'm not wrong, there are a lot of myths also around in data transformation we are hearing day in, day out. So I want to hear from you, what are the myths? Just talked about all about this data transformation, and as you rightly said by Parthaji explained, do you see the CAs have a career as a good career move into data transformation? since you were already experienced that Partha has the same sort of experience with the large industries, you have that. For the benefit of our young members, first of all, we would like to know what are the myths. What are myths around this, and if it is genuinely yes, we explain. We are convinced it has a value, immense value out of this, and how we young chartered accountant, experienced chartered accountant, make a gain out of this. So over to Jignesh, please.
Thanks, Chetanji. Good evening, everyone. So let's understand, just carrying forward what Parthaji mentioned. What is digital transformation? We have been hearing about this for the last few years, and especially COVID has just accelerated that term. And everyone, earlier it was used only by large companies, but now it has gone down the chain with SMEs, with and smaller size organizations. So let's go back 10 years and ask, if someone asks the CEO or the leadership team, what is digital transformation? They would show up a nice website, which is Google optimized and mobile friendly. Cut to 5 years back, ask them what is digital transformation. They would show you, they'll pull out their mobile and show you their app and say, probably that's, and they'll say, they'll show you some 200 apps across the organization which they are using and say, wow, this is digital transformation. Cut to current stage, what is digital transformation? Then we heard from Dhruba something about bots. They will now today show you the multiple bots which have been implemented across the organization. And is that digital transformation? If we go now a few years ahead, it could be conversational AI powered Alexa or Siri, which we may call digital transformation. But all these are myths, and that's where probably everyone gets carried away, and when digital transformation comes to them, they run away from that. So what is digital transformation? It's nothing but a continuous change process of adapting to your customer needs and being one step ahead of your competition. Very, very simply put it. What does digital transformation help you? It helps you react, change fast, and achieve a new product market fit in the market. That's what it's just simply about, reacting to a customer change. And that's how I would want to put. So just to conclude on what, breaking all the myths, what is digital transformation? It's nothing but business transformation, reacting to the consumer needs and the market. But being in today's scenario, you can't achieve a transformation without technology, and hence technology plays an important role, and it is called digital transformation. So just to put at that. Now let's come to what CAs can do a role in that. Okay, I'll put it into twofold. CAs, being part of processing transactions, putting together financial information, and third, auditing. And hence they are very close to the processes of the organization. New chartered accountants have to now see as to how these processes can be automated. They will have to understand, they have no choice but to understand what is robotic process automation, what is big data, what is good data, bad data. Okay, what is artificial intelligence, what does it help, what is machine learning? All these terms, my dear CA friends, it's not an option. You will have to know a bit of it. I don't expect you to go into detail of it, but you need to understand what it is. What will help you? It will only help you to see what processes can be automated, what it can and that can help you adapt to the consumer needs, the customer needs faster. So that is one large play. In every process you will have to see how can automation help, what is the right tool through which it can be automated, what is data, where is data existing across the organization, how does data comes into the organization to a particular stakeholder, what does he do with that data, how does he process it, whom does he pass it on to. And this is a process where you will have to look at what is good data and bad data, weed out bad data, and store good data and present it well in the form of a visualization tool, be it Power BI, Tableau, or any other tool. So that is one area I think where chartered accountants can play a very important role on automating the process. Now, coming to the second side of it is you will see a lot of automation happening, a lot of tools being implemented. That is where now the role of an auditor becomes very important. Again, to audit a particular thing, they will have to understand what is that tool, what does that tool do, how it has been, written, what was the objective, what data points go into it, how does it get processed, and what is the outcome of it. Because from an audit and control perspective, you will have to see that entire chain to see how that gets processed. Remember, we used to write, and I have been lucky enough to come from an age where debit, credit, we used to write on one side debit entry and the other side credit entry. What did accounting, softwares like Tally did? You just put one entry, the other entry, happens automatically. So early stage when new softwares were there, chartered accountants saw the process flow when one entry is passed, whether it is reflecting the right manner on the other side of it. Now, some complex automation tools have come in. So you have to slightly get into the complexity of it to see what the input is there, what the output is there, what the controls are in place. So that's how I would say a twin role of chartered accountant plays here.
Thank you so much, Jignesh bhai, explaining to us about what are the myths in a very simplistic way, and where do we as a chartered accountant can play a role. And this is inevitable. Sooner is a better. Everybody has to get along with this transformation happening in a business. So we have to acquit it at the earliest is possible, but better is that. So now coming back to Sanjay ji, since you work largely with the Thermax also for the last 11 years, and now you are a part of Cumis, which is 24 billion USD company. And sometime before you started with us, and you said over the time, last 2 decades, how expectations have been changed by management and audit committee. So we want to now know how you responded to those expectations. How would you match their expectation? How you balance it out, and at the same time you ensure that the basic core role of internal auditor has not been changed. We continue to be in assurance first and advisor and consulting along with that. So how you respond to that expectation? So would like to hear your share your experience on that, please, sir.
All right. I can share with you the experience that I went through while I was working in Thermax. My journey in Cummins has just started only a couple of months ago, so not much to talk about. But as I said, with each of these three phases, we initially what we did was we kind of looked at the organization. And look, I'm talking here from a internal audit standpoint only, and there can be different perspectives which could be different when you look at an organization. So when we looked at an organization, we kind of decomposed that organization into something called as processes. I will use that when I'm using the term processes. I will give some examples like order to cash process, procure to cash process, HR and payroll, fixed assets. So in a sense, internal audit started looking at the entire organization in these buckets. So that was the first thing that we actually ended up doing. And then we also try to understand how each of these processes are connected into the enterprise risk management framework, and how each of these processes impact the outcomes of the businesses. But having only understood that was not sufficient, because we also wanted to understand what are the internal control risks associated with each of these processes. So we ended up making a library of risk. I believe the number of risks that we documented must have been almost 2,000. I mean, that organization is a very, very complex organization. It's a multi-divisional organization. We had project business, and we had also service business. I mean, entire cradle to grave kind of business. So that is what we actually ended up doing. And believe me, when we started, creating linkages between the ERM and these processes, we started realizing and understanding what are the key controls which may have an impact or are likely to have impact on the risk profile of the organization or on the business outcome. So in a sense, in the first 3 to 4 years, we kind of built this inventory or library of risks. We built a library of controls. We had a comprehensive library of processes covering every facet of the operations of our organization. Now, after having done this, as I said, the audit committee was no longer in the mood to listen. Keep about 3 years audit plan. They said, no, we want continuous monitoring. So we said, all right, what can we do now about it? But fortunately, we since all had this foundation built, and this was very essential, and this is the key part or the key role that a chartered accountant actually plays, understanding the process, sitting with the process owner, understanding how the process flows, capturing that flow, evaluating that flow, identifying the controls embedded within that flow. All this was very intense, and it has to be intense, and it is very important. But this foundation actually helped us, to jump into or build a continuous auditing and continuous monitoring tool, because we actually knew what we want from because when you are writing all this audit risk, audit tests, etc., essentially what it tells you is what you want to know. So that's the first step in any implementation of continuous auditing and control monitoring. You need to know what you want to know. If you don't know that, then forget it. You will never be able to succeed in any implementation of CACL. Then the next step, which is very time consuming, is to understand, if I want to know a question, answer to a particular question as to why this risk is there, how this risk is, what is the level of risk, where is the data associated with that risk residing, which ERP system, which add-on system, which bolt-on system, and so on and so forth. So that is something what we call as, the term is called as data acquisition and data wrangling. That is also some of the people use the term. So we spend a lot of time to understand that for each of these processes, how the data is distributed across our IT landscape, and then figuring out as to which is the exact data that we want. Now, after having done that, we then used Python programming. Actually, we coded those scripts and extracted data from our various IT systems and pushed those Python scripts into a visualization tool called as Power BI, because you can extract the data and have those exceptions in the form of an Excel list, but that was not going to help us in the long term. So we pushed all this scripts and the output of the scripts into Power BI, and suddenly what we started seeing were answers to our questions in a visual form, and the underlying data was being updated on a very regular basis. Generally the frequency was around a week or so, and we had the data set was almost for 10 years data set, which was a very large size, containing about 200 million plus records we were processing. And this kind of stuff we actually built, and it actually helped us to start focusing upon what really matters when we are doing audit. My audit cycle time got compressed by almost 60%. I was able to see how the data is moving on nearly real-time basis. We stopped sampling because my entire population was there and my audit rules was actually giving me out exceptions. So no sampling. Then our risk assessment was no longer based on pure judgment. It was really data driven. My control assessments were also, data driven. So it took a lot of effort. So when we talk about control, continuous auditing and control monitoring, it's not like you have a tool, plug and play, and suddenly everything, you can start seeing. It's not that. It's a significant effort that has to be put, a significant manual effort, in mental effort, in understanding the processes, understanding what you want to know, understanding from where you can get the data. And trust me, this time occupies 90% of your time. 90% of the time. Creating a fancy looking dashboard does not take time. But if you don't know what you want, you cannot build a dashboard, So data acquisition, and also understanding the nitty-gritties of Python programming, understanding how the behavior of Power BI, the setup, the architecture, that takes a hell of a time, trust me. And I can proudly say today that after having done all this, we are data independent. It's a term that I have invented for my own self. Typically, as internal auditors, we are dependent on various process owners to give data, or log into the ERP systems, get data. My auditors no longer depend on anybody. They just log into their system, and when they open their computer, the visualizations are there for them to study. Now, having done this first step, we are now in the process of refining that, because we have to understand false positive cases, etc., etc. But it has been a humongous exercise for me personally, because and believe me, I'm not a programmer. I've never done programming ever in my life. But trust me, if you have that aptitude and urge to do that, you might as well learn Python, might as well learn Power BI, and you can actually build all this kind of data sets on your own. You need patience, perseverance, and more importantly, urge to progress. Because if you don't learn this, please trust me, forget chartered accountancy, go into something else. If you want to stay as a chartered accountant, you need to know this, as Jignesh has already said. You cannot escape. When we used to appear for CA exams, we used to say chapter option ko dala hai, वैसा नहीं हो सकता इसमें. All right. So that's my way
excellent, Sanjay ji.
Thank you.
Excellent, Sanjay ji. Very, very, very great insights. I'm sure my young members must have taken a lot of clues out of that. You nicely explained about data independent, and now time has changed. When we used to do during our earlier younger days, when you should do a sampling audit, that is no more holding good in today's business scenario. Say myself, JSW, we are around 1 trillion company. I cannot afford to do sampling. We cannot afford, because we are a multi-location, multi-geographical. You have to, because if you cannot give assurance to your stakeholders, your board, your SCM, your CFO, CEO, because we ourselves, if we're working on this sampling, I think we are not justifying our role also correctly. So I think this is inevitable. Again, sooner the better. And one more good clue I take it from you. So I think that's the question for Rajesh ji now. You talk very nicely about this.
Chetan, just give me a second. I have to add a couple of more thoughts in this. While I've said all this, that a chartered accountant needs to learn all these things, but there are certain aspects in internal audit, and I'm again saying talking only from an internal audit standpoint, that we should not forget. As Rajesh has already put out, that the expectations from the audit committee has not really speaking changed. They expect us to do control assurance. Only the tools of trade have changed. All right, that is part one. We as internal auditors still need to listen to diverse viewpoints. That is very important. Second, even if you are having entire data on your laptop, that does not mean that you should not visit a factory and sit with the process owner, connect with the process owner, and listen to him. That is important and equally important. just because you are having all the data on your laptop does not mean you can work in isolation. That is very important. That is very important for
Essential
us to
requirement.
understand. Empathy
Absolutely.
is one of the most important attribute that an internal auditor needs to have. That's all. That were a couple of things that I wanted to speak about. Thank you.
That is very precisely and rightly said, sir. That forms a part of a pre-audit we call. So that will reduce your turnaround time, your total time on the field work. Because when we do audit, when we go to field, 60 to 80% of work has been done on the desk through the visualization tools. So we will spend less time mainly for query discussion, and as you rightly said, you need to be on the ground. You cannot afford to do everything on sitting on a desktop and reviewing. Definitely that will help us with the exception. So when you're on the ground, you understand even other side of the management, and then we come and conclude the real exception. So thank you, Sanjay ji, for greater insights. I truly appreciate. And now taking one word I heard from you, a continuous control monitoring system. I think that's interests me more, and that is my next clue given by you. Thank you so much. So over to Rajesh ji. Rajesh ji, as you see, our bread and butter, we as the internal auditor is audit. But we do ERM is also our responsibility. Now IFC has come, that is our responsibility. So same control, when we do risk assessment, we see the what is control, then we do a residual risk after putting on those 4 category of risk controls. We are doing IFC now. There is a ICFR, definitely internal audit. That based on our control assessment, we see what are the net internal audit issues. So as rightly said by Sanjay ji, he's talking about continuous control monitoring, sir. That is I think again a buzzword in the industry that is also helping internal audit in a great way. This is tool available, maybe implemented by business to key business processes where continuous monitoring done. So we can get assurance or compliance, IFC control, we can get the control assessment for risk, and definitely our major business process. So does the CCMS really help to cover all this responsibility which posed by us under statutory laws to us, or it will only cover a few? So over to Rajesh ji, just help with the insight, the way you are handling it last in Ranbaxy, now with Sun Pharma, sir. Over to you, sir.
So to a large extent, I would say, Chetan, because as Sanjay pointed out, there is a risk and a corresponding control and a corresponding rules library that one creates at the beginning of when you are setting up a CCM system. And as he rightly again said, that you must know what you want from these. So basically, what are these? These are exceptions which the system is doing instead of an individual doing it, as we used to do in the past. Several controls. Now the basis of internal audit shifted to the base being ERM, as Sanjay mentioned. ERM has to be integrated with your audit plan, and there are certain risks which are common between all three. Let's say internal financial controls, ICFR, or so-called SOX, if you were, and internal audit testing, and also ERM. So the base and the foundation or the mother document would be the ERM, and the control would run across these three, let's say, territories, which are not exactly territories but subparts of the same process. So it is in an ideal world, it is always better to sort of leverage a tool where you are able to satisfy the requirement of all the three to the extent possible, so that the effort that goes into these exercises or these testing procedures is minimized, number one. Number two, you are also not putting that much of pressure on the process owner by going to them multiple times and saying, now I have to do ERM assessment, now I am doing internal audit, and now I am doing IFC. So there are certain requirements, specific requirements of IFC, of the period that needs to be covered, and that is where you have to sort of work back with your ERM and the audit plan and see which are the controls that can be met along with the audit plan and also, the CCM piece per se. So it is all an interconnected world now. With the technology coming in,
Absolutely.
it is all an interconnected world, and you can give an assurance without putting much effort, not only on your team but also on the process owner. So you optimize the effort that goes into the exercise, and giving a consistent result across these three sub areas.
Excellent, Rajesh. Excellent. I think you rightly said how CCMS will help us to having a reduce on the duplication basically. So we synergize, because same thing sometimes RCM, when we do RCM or we do risk assessment or we do internal audit, every time we talked about control for all the key business process, the CCMS will help us to avoid any duplication and to have our turnaround time to be improved on the business process review. Thank you so much, Rajesh. So my next question, we talked about lot about the technology. So I wanted, now there are two subject experts in data transformation. One is Partha and another is Jignesh. So I would request to both of you, one after another. Can you just give us, because we talked lot about the technology, we talked about ML, machine learning, we talked about artificial intelligence, we talked about robotic process, we talked about data mining, and there are any number of things, etc., etc. Because if I cannot list out, because many tools are coming from different companies. So would you help we as a to my participant, to my members, to with some practical examples how those are used in a business? Because these are, as you rightly said sometime before, unless I know the actual implementation or usages in a business, these are only fancy words. Even I may not incline to, but at the same time I cannot afford to keep away that. I need to get into that. I have to audit through that. So I request first to Partha to help us to know how this automation gives some practical example to us and how business is getting benefited out of this. So first to Partha, and then I request Jignesh, both maybe in a couple of minutes time, you help us, all of us, to enlighten with the practical benefits and examples, please. Over to Partha, please.
Sure, Chetan. I think let me start with the automation part, right? Maybe we will decipher the automation. So automation is a process again. It has got a maturity roadmap, and every one of us have gone through an automation, right? It starts from a desktop automation where you can do something on an Excel, then you move into an ERP automation where, or the CCMS, what we are talking about is a managed a system-based thing, and then we move into a RPA where we have bots, etc. And the last leg of it is what we call as a CPA, which is a cognitive processing, where you get the ML and the AIs, etc., where it replicates the cognitive capabilities of a human being, right? If suppose you do an RPA, you are getting some results. Can you use these results? Can you leverage those results to get back to another outcome? So that is a last level of it. And I think invariably we have seen these kind of, we have experienced. If you really go to a chatbot today, chatbot is much easier. We are used to it. Today you can pick up a help desk call. We don't get it. You are directed to a chatbot. It goes through a logical question and it replicates what you can ask next. Then it moves on. Okay, so that's a process we have gone through. Maybe in terms of real life example, I can maybe one or two I'll take it, and then I'll leave it to Jignesh to elaborate. Maybe today in the insurance area, in a motor insurance, today you can just click a snapshot of when the accident happens and just log it to a site, and immediately a robot runs in the background, and if it is well within the limit, within 5 minutes you get back the check. This is now the new era. Gone those days where you need to fill the form, file the applications, etc. Those have moved. Again, moving into the same insurance sector, you miss a flight, you are eligible for a refund. Today, I've seen that, like we have worked with Bajaj Alliance. They have built out a blockchain platform wherein which the moment a person misses a flight and it is because of a delay of an airline, automatically the amount is credited. Because obviously when you tick a ticket, it asks for an insurance at the end. We don't really recognize that, okay, why it needed. But in case if it is there, you need not go to the hurdle of going back to the airport, fill that part, etc., etc. Those are gone. And again, in a real life example of an audit where you're doing a bank reconciliation, simple bank reconciliation, because obviously there are a lot of bots which are available. So what I can say is that you have a lot of use cases, you can replicate those things, but again, every business is unique, and there are certain nitty-gritties in this which you wanted to bring through, and everywhere the focus is something different. So where is a fine tuning is required, but automation is a small journey, and I think it is very, very adaptable. Over to you, Jignesh.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Partha.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Just quickly, young chartered accountants and friends, one very important point, if you've noted amongst all speakers, what they were saying is business understanding. And I'm giving you a very important tip today, is understanding of business is very important, be it from an accounting perspective, be it from an audit perspective, and now all the more from digital transformation perspective or automation of any tools. So just walk on to the other side. Don't sit in your seat just because you're approving vouchers, or so. Don't be in that ego trip that I am approving people's vouchers and I am passing on the claim, so I need to sit in. Go on to the other side. Understand how business actually happens. That will give you a cue into what can be automated, what is happening. So please talk to your stakeholders. Whenever you get an opportunity, go across your desk and speak to them. Now coming to, let me give you two examples and two different tools which can be used specifically, and I'll talk about my industry. Okay, now being a broadcaster, our core revenue, one of the very important sources of revenue is advertisement. How does that advertisement come? There is a release order which comes from a client or an agency that is entered into our broadcast management software. And through the broadcast management software, it gets scheduled. The programs, promos, ads get scheduled, and then that gets played on air. And that's how you see it on your television through a cable service provider or a DTH service provider. Now, we used to enter that release order into the broadcast management system in the erstwhile days. Now, let's talk about how RPA can change that. And now connect with all the processes around what you are looking at it. Any process which is routine, and Partha just mentioned about logical, and something what is rule based, any such process can be automated through RPA. Very simple. So now when you look at a process, check whether it is rule based, it is routine, it is logical, few more steps, a robot can handle it. So what we did is this entire process of a reading of an RO. We have to look at the company, we have to look at the brand, we have to look at how many spots of advertisement, how many seconds, whether it's 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and enter it into the respective slots in the broadcast management software. Okay, now this, we made a bot read this. As soon as it comes from the client, it comes to a bot email. Bot opens the email, reads whether all the data points are there into that. If not, it rejects it and sends a mail back saying, details not available. These are the details not available. Please ask for these. And hence it cannot be entered. If all the details are okay, it goes and enters into the broadcast management system and sends a confirmation back to you saying that the release order has been booked. Fantastic. We followed a 80-20 rule here again. We realized that X percentage of our, and I don't want to name that, give you the exact, but I'm saying that 80% of the business was coming from X number of clients or agencies, and we took that as a first step. Very simple. And I will give you at a cost of 10 to 12 lakhs, we automated something which actually was being done by 4 people, and just multiply that the cost of 4 people into annual in their salary and annually, and whereas at one point of time we could automate all this. So that's the benefit of RPA. I just put numbers here so you get the impact of it. With a small investment, what kind of benefit you can get. Okay, now moving on to
thank you so much.
Can I take one more example, Chetan? Just on the
we can take.
Yeah, just very quickly.
Sure.
Again,
machine learning.
Again, machine learning. Okay, now all our advertisements are commonly tracked by an organization called Broadcast Audience Research Council, which reports the ratings also. Okay, now if we have to look at machine learning for predicting the sales for the future months, And the past data is available on which client spend how much, which brand spend how much on that, which channel across everything. All that data is available through ADEX, it's called, which is ad expenditure through BARC. Now, what can machine learning do? It can actually go and see that, okay, last October, which brand advertised how much? Okay, and this is the period, this is the quarter when, let's say, for example, this industry advertises the most. And which channels, which genres does it advertise the most? And hence it is likely that this year they will advertise again. What will their competitor advertise? And hence it becomes easier for you to predict what would be your sales. And please apply this to your respective industries and see what is the variables available for the past and current trend. And now coming to the COVID trend, what it does is the algorithms are built in such a manner that it looks at the last same month previous years, and it also looks at the last few months how the trend has been. It takes both into consideration and gives you a suggested target or the likely performance for the future months. So that is a bit of machine learning algorithms which we put into it. So innumerable examples which today it can do, but in the interest of time, just 2 examples here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving a practical insights, Parthaji and Jignesh. Murtazaji, do we have a questions? If we don't have much question, I would like to take a last question, because see, now it's the dinner time, so I don't want to come between session and dinner time. So I want to conclude now. Do we have more questions, or should I take a last question? Do we have time? 5 minutes? Yeah, I can take, Murtazaji.
सर मिश्रा बोल रहा हूँ, क्वेश्चन नहीं है सर. सर मिश्रा बोल रहा हूँ, क्वेश्चन
Okay, ठीक है. So the last question. So I don't want to now, as you rightly said, interest of time, and now it's the dinner time. So I don't want to come between the dinner of my participant and our session. So a last question quickly to Parthaji. Parthaji, since you being in chartered accountant, you pursue career, you move from audit to advisory to technology. Now you become a technoman. Then your core being in finance and accounts. So how do you think, is it really a promising? I'm sure my participant would like to know, because other two are just like me. We are a core internal auditor last 25 years. But you two being brought up as a CA, but now being more of a techno person. So is that a promising career for chartered accountants? Just want to hear from you with the greater experience you guys are having into this. So just highlight us, help us. Yeah, please, Parthaji, over to you.
Definitely, Chetan. I think the way in which I perceive is that, like, the basic knowledge what we have got from our academics, be it on the finance or accounts or taxation, right? That is going to be the backbone for us. And whatever the training we have got, maybe a limited one or extensive one, I think these are going to give us a business insight. And these are the two things, basics, which are really required for anybody to venture, whether you call it as a business consulting, technology consulting, or a transformation advisory. Again, these are jargons. Again, whatever we have all spoken, it is all basically the process and how you enable the technology for the process. That's it. That's all. So what you are currently doing in a manual process, if it is being digitally done, it is called as a digital transformation. So I think we should not shy away in terms of getting into a technology platform, etc. But having said that, like, I think always the digital transformation brings the opportunities and the career paths. I think one should go ahead. And today the progression in the industry is not a linear one. Previously, you start a career in an organization, you just move ahead and become a CEO. It's a zigzag. So how do you jump past? Like Sanjay just said, that how you accelerated that part. So that's the way you learn on your business. That's the base. You move on to a technology. You become you get the consulting piece. Then you leverage the consulting piece and then go back. And today, either myself or Jignesh, we are in a position, and then still we are doing a digital transformation. Is that like, okay, fine? You know both the sides of the story, correct? So it is a very balanced, and what is right for the organization, you are just picking it up. So in a nutshell, I think this is a journey path which is inevitable. And I think everybody has to move ahead. That's what Sanjay said, that like, if you don't learn, you're out of the game. I think that's where I will say that, like, yes, we have to pursue it as a subject like a finance and accounts and a taxation. This is also a must.
Thank you so much, Parthaji, for
Chetan,
Sure.
just 30 seconds to
Murtuza
add
ji,
to what Partha said. Just on to that,
please.
all that. See, if you look across the current CFO requirements or the job descriptions, tech is one very important factor. Digital transformation or tech impact is considered as one of the very important part of the job descriptions. So just to give you a cue into it, and in my view, this is the best time if you have to get onto the digital side. And I always believe when it is the first few years, it's the best to make a career in that. Then there will be a lot many people come in. This is the right opportunity, and with the right background of finance, account, tax, and the right understanding of business and understanding of tech, it's a great combination. Best wishes to all of you.
Thank you so much, Jignesh ji. Very nicely summarized. So, as you rightly motivated our all young chartered accountants, you now that there is an opportunity, you CA plus data scientist. That is a more promising career now, which we never thought of, never heard of, but that is the future. That's what I understand from you all four experts. Thank you so much. Murtuza ji, do we have any questions to answer, or should I summarize quickly 2 minutes what we discussed last 70 minutes, or should I summarize quickly? We can't hear you, Murtuza ji. I think you are on mute. Yeah. So thank you so much. I think we heard the collective wisdom of 100+ years. My all four panelists were highly knowledgeable. They were real galaxy of the knowledge, and definitely along with my young members, me as a moderator also got a lot of learnings. I'm sure my other members must have got it. So friends, I will quickly summarize. Sanjay ji has talked about how expectation has been changed due to disruption in technology. Then Rajesh ji has very nicely talked about a kind of techniques you have to change because of the disruption of technology. Then we talked about digital transformation by Partha. What are the myths? Jignesh has very nicely explained us. What are the wrong myths about transformation? How it is promising for CAs to make a career in digital transformation? What are the roles? I think then Sanjay ji explained us how change of the expectation from the stakeholders, the kind of response given, kind of technology. And I think one thing we missed in discussion, Sanjay ji has explained to us, he made this technology Power BI. It's a very, very cost effective way, although he took a lot of pain, but which was very cost effective. And he could able to leverage from sampling to 100%. And the term what he used is data independent, which is help us in pre-audit. And before going to pre-audit, a lot of things, exception can be worked upon. So he explained us how he has responded and given comfort to the board, to the top management. Thereafter, Rajesh has talked about, very nicely talked about to avoid a duplication, how he is leveraging the company like Sun Pharma and Baxi. They were using continuous control monitoring system. So we do assessment even during a risk assessment. When we do IFC, ICFR, definitely internal audit, where there also we do control assessment, a kind of control, and how that CCMS leverage as an integrated approach, so we can save time and efficiency in our reviews. So he spoke about CCMS, and thereafter Jignesh and Partha has very nicely explained. Partha has talked about automation benefits, live examples. Jignesh has talked about ML and RPA live practical example, how it is connected. That is the way of the life. We cannot afford to disconnect. We have to integrate that sooner the better. And I think lastly, Partha and Jignesh both explained very nicely, and we concluded it's a very promising career. So chartered accountant can now go out of that comfort zone of only doing auditing, tax, account, and the benefit of we discussed in the process last 1 hour. We are used to with the Tally, which is non-integrated sort of ERP. There are ERP, SAP, HANA, Oracle, BAN. So this integrated ERP, we have to align, we have to get along and understand those things along with the business understanding. I think we'll able to perform our role better and much better. So that's from my side. Thank you so much once again to all my panelists. It was wonderful session. I'm sure each one of my participants will gain a great knowledge bites out of the today's discussion. Over to Murtuza ji. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chetan bhai. So well conducted panel. And I'm really delighted. Last 1 hour plus, I've been glued to the screen and getting so much of insight. And I think what came out from all the panel discussion is that as a chartered accountant, we know the basics and we have to keep the basics, like of the understanding of the whole end-to-end process. Like Jignesh mentioned, they did automation, but where? What are the things you want to automate? What tools you want to use? And then how it will be cost benefit and cost effective and also an efficient way. So I think the understanding of those basics is very, very important. But again, one more thing which have come out is like if you only stick to our basics of finance, ticking and vouching and posting, then maybe we'll be left behind. So we need to look at, and maybe we do a course or we don't do a course and we learn practically. But there are so many tools on RPA, on DA, on overall automation and digitalization journey. And with this COVID, most organizations are like moving to work from anywhere, IT security issues, even like using all these tools. So really, all of those have come out, and I'm sure people will look at a lot of career option and look to do multiple things. One last request to all the panelists: we'll also upload this recording on the WRC website, and we've seen in the past lot of people go download and listen to them. So that is one. And I request the participants to write to any queries that they have, wirc@ici.in, and whatever queries, if they're specific, we'll send it to you. Otherwise also we'll send to whoever we feel is the best feed, get your answers and send it back to the participants. So a big thank you to all, and I request all the participants to carry out a thank with a loud applause. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you. We just logged out, sir. Thank you so much once again, one and all. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you.
Thank you, and all the best to the participants.
Thank you. Yeah, all the
Thank
best
you.
to our young buddies. Thank you.